Somewhere beyond the recesses of time and space, two podcasters are set adrift in a machine, picking up transmissions of movies that are forgotten but not gone.
Welcome everyone to Movie Memory Machine, the only podcast about forgotten movies whose hosts are still crazy for each other after all these years.
Oh.
I am your host, Landen Solano, joined always by my co-host, Truman Caps. Truman, buddy, eye contact, light touch of the hand, it's good to see you.
Landon, mutual eye contact. It is good to be seen and to feel seen by you, which is something that you sort of take for granted, I think, when your relationship is as good as ours. That in a lot of podcasters, you know, they don't have this anymore. I heard that the guys at Pod Save America, they don't even look at each other when they podcast anymore.
They're just going through the motions. The commitment that they've been together for so long is evidence enough that the relationship is strong.
Is it? I mean, I don't know. I think that they are so busy trying to save America with their pod that they haven't focused on saving their pod. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not sure that I know what I mean.
For the sake of getting us to the next segment, yes, I know what you mean. Truman, how are you feeling about our relationship?
You know, I am feeling really good about it, frankly, and that's not just me saying that, A, because I'm trying to avoid a conflict, or B, because a number of people are listening to us have this discussion and I don't want to do it in public. I feel like, honestly, I talk to you more frequently and for longer and in more depth than all of my friends who live in the same city with me, who I see on a regular basis. I know more about you and your life and your outlook and your worldview than I do about, I think, anyone else short of my girlfriend and parents. And I also feel like, and this is going to sound extra weird, but as we've been doing this new podcast, as I've been editing it, and as we've both been kind of contributing to it in our own ways, I've had this real sense of like, wow, Landon and I are, like, this is not like having a kid. I'm pretty sure this is not what having kids is like. Just our listeners.
We've gone into that territory before, and I've resolved to never compare anything to being a parent ever again.
I absolutely not, and that is not what I'm doing here, because we are not sending this podcast to college. I'm just saying that having a thing that we both love, that we are both contributing to and affecting in our own ways, and that we are really, and the joy that that's bringing me, it's been like, this has been a cool thing to do with my bro.
Yeah. How about comparing it to a household? Rather than raising a live child that you are responsible for and have to, be terrified what they're being brought up into and as, etc., etc.
That may be true, although also calling back to our Poltergeist episode, I'm not a homeowner and I never will be. So again, it's a thing that's kind of out of my grasp. But well, yes, no, follow that out. Tell me.
Not raising a house, but raising a home. You know, the home is where the heart is. You build out, our little spaceship here. We are building a home together, and it's a true collaboration. I think I tend to agree with you. The state of our relationship is good. I think we have good conflict resolution in that we don't really have conflict, but when we have differing opinions, we listen to each other.
Yes.
We don't dismiss the other's opinion outright. We let it mull over us, and I am, very happy to say I've conceded on many, many points that I thought I had a strong vision about, and you ended up being right. So, you ask anyone around me who I annoy to the nth degree about talking about the podcast that we make, I think my partner is more annoyed that I compliment you more than I compliment her. To her. So maybe our relationship is good at the sacrifice of others.
So what you're saying is our relationship is too strong. It is so strong that we are fucking up our other relationships. Everybody get on our level. We're Thelma and Louising ourselves, basically. Our relationship is so strong that it will eventually kill us.
I really enjoy how enthusiastic you get about monkeys.
Okay, now listen. That's the wrong kind of enthusiasm. I'm very upset usually when I see a monkey on screen. It was just that...
well, when you spot a monkey, it's very enthusiastic.
Well, look. I think we are both referring to a thing in our lives that both brought us joy, which is the Life or Something Like It mini episode where we're playing the trailer game, and I've predicted that we're going to see the monkey in the trailer, and the first thing you hear on the podcast is a monkey screeching, and me, like a young child at the zoo, just gleefully shouting, "Monkey! Monkey!"
But I can hear your finger pointing when you do that. Anyway, we're navel gazing at this point.
Oh yeah, really hard. I love the way you navel gaze, Landon. You're so good at it.
Well, I've been doing it my whole life. The machine has made us watch Hope Springs from 2012.
Hope Springs.
Hope Springs Eternal. Is that a Shakespeare reference?
You know, you're asking me that like I'm the kind of guy who reads books and knows things, but I will keep talking to mask the sound of Landon typing at his computer while he looks it up, because that is what a good partner does. I'm gonna say yes, though, right?
Oh, you would think so. Well, you can't trust the internet to attribute anything accurately these days, but it's saying it's from Alexander Pope. This is coming from Goodreads, so I'm hoping this is sourced well. An Essay on Man by Alexander Pope. Here's the quote. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Man never is, but always to be best. The soul uneasy and confined from home rests and expediates in a life to come.
How many...
not expediates.
Expedites?
Expatiates.
Expatiates. Okay, well, that's one of those old-timey words. Folks, how many...
I don't often have... this is why I fuck up so many words on this show. I am an avid reader, but outside of the podcast, I'm not an avid talker. So I rarely have use of these words. And so they've never entered or exited my mouth before.
I know you're watching new words being born when Landon tries to pronounce these things. But really, how many podcasts, folks, do you get where it starts with the two hosts having a robust and pleasant discussion about the strength of their relationship and transfers straight into a poetry reading? I mean, that's what we bring you here at the Movie Memory Machine. How do you think that poem does it? A, do you think that the movie is based on that poem by Alexander Pope? B, do you think that poem sets up the movie well?
A, I have to really process that quote. If I haven't mentioned it before, lyrics and quotes just they slide off my brain. I am an avid karaokeer, yet I couldn't recite to you the words to almost any song that I've karaoke'd. They don't resonate with me. I don't know what they mean. I could be singing about anything. What I just read to you, I felt like I cold read. I don't know what it meant. I have to sit and pull apart every single word and just kind of go, okay, hope springs eternal in the human breast.
Oh,
okay. So is that saying
so
like
thinking about boobs
hope
now,
is coming from the soul?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what that means?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Hope. Yeah. I think that the nature of being human is to constantly have optimism for a better future and a better life.
Okay.
We're really doing this. We're doing a book report.
Man never is, but always to be blessed.
Okay. Okay, boy, you know what? I think I let us down a dark alley because now I'm realizing I can't fully interpret this, and so now we're going to get two dudes misinterpreting a well-regarded poem live on the air. Because I'm assuming that just kind of is repeating that, yeah, men are always doing this. By man, I mean people. They're just always being hopeful.
Okay,
cool.
Okay, and I think this movie does take an optimistic approach.
It does. I would agree with you. Continue setting it up. I think we got sidetracked by poetry when we were trying to explain to people what movie we're going to be talking about for the next couple hours.
Let's just do take two. Well, today the machine has made us watch Hope Springs from 2012. Truman, what happens in this film?
Thank you for asking, Landon. Omaha housewife Kay Soames, played by Meryl Streep, has been married to her husband Arnold, played by Tommy Lee Jones, for 31 years. They sleep in separate bedrooms. Arnold barely looks at her and avoids all physical contact. They haven't had sex in 5 years. Desperate to restore some sense of intimacy and romance to her life, Kay suggests that they travel to the tiny town of Hope Springs, Maine, to speak out the services of famed couples therapist Dr. Bernard Feld, played by Steve Carell. Arnold refuses to acknowledge that anything is wrong in the relationship, but he reluctantly goes with her, angrily complaining the entire way. During several intensive therapy sessions over the course of a week, Dr. Feld coaches the two of them through a series of exercises that help reignite their passion for one another and bring love back to their marriage.
Okay.
Hope Springs?
That is a pretty damn good synopsis. What's tricky about this film is that...
Everything?
There's not, like... plot. Okay, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go into some specs, and then I'll add that to my personal reflections.
Perfect.
This movie was directed by David Frankel, written by Vanessa Taylor. We'll get into their careers in a little bit. As you said, it stars Meryl Streep, Tommy Lee Jones, Steve Carell, with special appearances by Jean Smart and Elisabeth Shue.
And Mimi Rogers.
I'm sorry. Yes, how could I forget the Mimi?
It's yes, and not the mini Mimi. A ridiculously stacked supporting cast of people whose names you see on IMDb and assume, oh, they're going to have more than one scene, right? And they don't.
No, they are in one scene.
Nope.
That said, they are the only people in the movie who aren't either sitting or lying down. I will get to that in a minute.
They're true supporting characters in that they're supporting their weight with their legs by standing up.
Yes. Okay. So we got some interesting stuff right out the gate here.
Yes.
This movie was released on August 8th, 2012 by Sony Pictures. Do you know what the interesting thing is so far?
The August 8th was the day that Richard Nixon submitted his resignation in 1974. No, Landon, what's interesting about it?
We're starting to already see a trend of, I don't know if there's causation here or if this is the effect of a decision, but let's see. This is the fourth film, so half of the films that we've covered have been released in August.
Oh shit! I see. This is why I'm bad on this side of this relationship. I am not listening, I guess, when you say the release dates of the movie, and I am not.
Remember that.
I guess not. So it's August. So it's like, so forgotten movies are getting dumped at the end of the summer.
It seems like it, yeah. Especially, so here are the films that were released in August that we've covered so far: 54, Barnyard, Simone, and Hope Springs.
Wait, so it's the last four movies we've done, right? Oh, no, Poltergeist.
No, Poltergeist was in there that we missed. But yeah, beyond Poltergeist, the rest of them have been August. Now,
beyond Poltergeist, the sequel to Poltergeist.
The outlier here is Hope Springs, because just before, I'd say like in 2009-ish, plus or minus, these things don't, there's not a super delineated line in the sands of time, but roughly around that time is when blockbuster season got expanded to, May and then August, and then, now it's all year round. So you would often like offload movies that you didn't know how to market in January and August between these big seasons.
Marketing, yes.
So Hope Springs is different in that it comes out kind of at the tail end of blockbuster season. And maybe once these get into some other specs, that might be illuminating too. But I can see Simone was 2002, Barnyard, it was 2002. Barnyard 2006, 54, 98. That fits pretty squarely in that like post-blockbuster season. So that seems to make sense to me.
And I don't think there has ever been a harder movie to market than Hope Springs. I don't like if you're talking about a time period. Oh, really? You disagree? Oh, folks,
do.
There's clouds on the horizon. We need to talk to Dr. Bernard Feld here to resolve this.
Well, let's do some other specs, and then let's get into some personal reflections here. But
yeah,
this movie was released pretty wide into 2,361 theaters. It debuted at number 4.
What?
It came out against two other big movies that week and on the tail end of another one. So On August 8th, the weekend of August 8th, also coming out and reached number 1 in the box office was The Bourne Legacy.
Wait.
That's the one with Jeremy Renner.
That's the Jeremy Renner one, yes. In the thick of the Renaissance.
Coming in number 2, also new this week, the Will Ferrell, Zach Galifianakis film, The Campaign.
Oh, fuck. That movie sucked. Okay, yes. I just did see it in theaters, though.
And then in its second week, coming in at number 3, was The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, well, speaking of movies I saw in theaters and didn't like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it was a time of big, broad comedies and big superhero tentpoles. That was kind of the milieu that Hope Springs launched into.
At least this weekend, yes. So here's how it does in the box office, though. You know, we've seen a trend, but not enough to say it's on every film, where we haven't, first of all, we haven't had a movie debut at number 1 yet. So we haven't had a number 1 box office hit on the show. Curious when we'll get to that one. But the trend has been, like, it debuts at number 4, stays at number 4, and then disappears forever.
Yes.
Here is what Hope Springs does. Debuts at number 4. In its second week, it goes to 8. In its third week, it goes to 9. In its fourth week, it goes to 10. And then it drops off in its fifth week. So it hangs in the top 10 box office for quite a while.
That's interesting that the movie had this much staying power. Is that just retirees who will see any movie with like a romance about old people?
I have a lot to say about that, and my short answer is yes. And the way the movie-going behaviors of older audience members, I think, bore out that.
We're gonna make new enemies today. We're gonna say things. We're gonna get angry comments from people who are having their grandkids type it up for them.
I have, I think, a lot of good things to say about it. About that audience. Okay. Lastly, this was had an estimated $30 million budget, which is a mid-range, low to mid-range for 2012.
Movie they don't make anymore. Yep.
It made domestically. Now, this is the interesting thing. It domestically makes just upwards of $63.5 million.
Wow.
So doubles its production budget. Again, the budget doesn't include marketing. Internationally, it does just under $70 million. So the total gross, both domestic and worldwide, comes in at $133 million.
Wait, they made $100 million off Hope Springs.
Yes, minus the marketing budget, but yes.
But how? But like the marketing budget for this, like, I mean, this is not like the marketing budget for like for Tarzan or something.
Right.
Yeah, this is a much smaller thing. Is this the most profitable movie that we've discussed? Hope Springs?
I'd have to crunch the numbers on that. Maybe I'll do that between the seasons, and we'll mention that in our season 1 Super Spectacular.
It's amazing that the recipe for success with a forgotten movie is people over the age of 65 having sex. That's what the people want. I'm not even doing a bit anymore. More horny old people movies, but not in a dirty grandpa way, in a heartfelt, recognizing that intimacy has no age limit way.
Wow. Okay, I got so much to say. But let's get into some personal reflections. Where was this movie on your radar before we watched it today? Had you seen it? Thoughts, feelings? Tell me everything.
I mean, it's the B-2 stealth bomber. Not on my radar at all. Not aware that it's there until you get killed by being forced to watch it for a podcast 12 years later. I don't know. That probably not a great thing to be talking about right now. Something about the poster for it. I don't know if I remember it because I have been looking at the poster a lot recently as I do research for the episode, or if it's just the kind of poster that it's like I'm walking into the movie theater in 2012 to see a different movie, and like I walk by that poster. You know, there's something about Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones in front of blinds with kind of a shifty look in their eyes. It's not as memorable as a gigantic woman next to a tiny man, but something about that sticks in my brain.
Here's the thing about the poster is that it is reminiscent of a lot of movies, not like this movie, but geared toward, I think, the same audience as this movie. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, like, I can easily picture Jennifer Aniston in one corner, and maybe Paul Rudd in another corner. I'm not talking about Wanderlust, but like rumor has it, or Jane Fonda in one quadrant of it.
I mean, and Wanderlust kind of tonally similar. I mean, it's a couple trying to fix up their marriage by going to a different location.
True. Yeah, I guess. Okay, so this is your first time seeing it.
Yes.
And you were maybe aware of it, maybe not aware of at least the poster.
I am aware that Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep once sat on opposite sides of a room and angled their eyes in the opposite direction. That is the most that I knew. And I did not know that it was from the twisted, fucked up mind of David Frankel, director of The Devil Wears Prada, until now. What about you?
I had seen this before.
Wait. I don't. This shouldn't keep surprising me. I'm just trying to were you just seeing everything? Still?
I think I was on a Steve Carell kick at the time. In fact, I remember seeing. So I didn't see this in the theater. I'll maybe preface it with that, but I do remember seeing the trailer, and this was without getting real deep into Steve Carell at the moment. This was at an interesting time in his career.
Oh,
and
yes.
This is pre-Foxcatcher. And I remember, embarrassingly at this point, saying, I think to my parents, that just watch. I think Steve Carell's going to be nominated for an Oscar.
Oh boy. Oh, Landon. You know what? But hey, you know what? I love you anyway. I love you in spite of your misguided Oscar predictions.
I mean, I had the prescience to know that he would be nominated someday. I just thought this would be the huge dramatic turn for him. And spoiler alert, he's the worst thing about this movie. And I'm pretty sure he plays a serial killer.
Oh man. Okay, you say serial killer, I say cult leader. It's the little differences that bring spice to this pairing. Yeah, no, Steve Carell in this role is, boy, talk about miscast, and that is not a slight against Steve Carell, a phenomenal actor who... is it controversial to say he's great and he rules and I like him? It's just wrong place at the wrong time.
I think it's not even... that. I think the role... I think there's more foundational things at play here than just the wrong actor being cast. What do you... I feel like I want to start this conversation just with a little bit of context about David Frankel and the writer Vanessa Taylor. Mm-hmm. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've learned some things about Vanessa Taylor lately as well, so yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let's start with David Frankel. This is the second pairing between him and Meryl Streep. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, he directed The Devil Wears Prada, which was a huge hit.
Very big.
But he got his start in TV and didn't direct his first feature film until 1994 with Miami Rhapsody. Then the following year, he wins an Oscar for a short film called Dear Diary.
Wow.
And I think between those two things, set him up as kind of a commercial / prestige, like the perfect Venn diagram overlap of this is exactly the type of Oscar baity director we can cultivate.
Yes, absolutely, and also a director who won an Academy Award for a short subject, a lot like Victor Taransky from Simone.
You're right. Oh my God, good callback.
Yeah.
So after he wins,
wait, hang on. Yeah. What if Simone played the therapist in Hope Springs? Would that enhance the movie? Would that make the part better?
It wouldn't make it any worse, though. It would add an odd element, I think. I think it needed to be a male therapist because of the challenge to Tommy Lee Jones's masculinity.
True.
But we can get into that more.
Go ahead. Yeah, let's be Frankel. Continue.
Okay. Keep Frankeling. After he wins Oscar for Dear Diary, his short film in '95, he goes on a stint of working with HBO for the next few years. He did an episode or a couple episodes of Band of Brothers, From Earth to the Moon, Sex and the City, an episode of Entourage, which he won an Emmy for.
Didn't he do the pilot for Entourage?
Was it the pilot?
I think
Could've
it
been.
was.
I don't know. I didn't write that down.
And also, based on the way TV residuals work, if you direct the pilot episode of something, you get a cut of everything else from that show forever.
So he's basking in turtle money.
Yes, exactly.
So after he wins the Emmy for that, that's when he directs Devil Wears Prada. Huge. Yep. Meryl was also nominated for that movie. Goes on to do the following year Marley and Me, the dog movie with Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
Based on the book.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2011, he does The Big Year, one that I can smell cooking in the machine already.
Ew, gross.
Well, someone has to clean that out every once in a while.
Well, it's going to be one of us. The division of labor in this, I'm always the one cleaning out the movie Memory Machine. Landon never wants to do it. Dr. Feld, help us.
Then right after The Big Year, he does this movie. And then since, he's kind of gone on to direct both TV and films to varying degrees of success. So, an odd, interesting career. Maybe not odd or interesting. In fact, it's the opposite of both of those. You don't need to go back and just kind of delete everything you said out of relevance. I mean, I think that he has an interesting career. The three-peat of The Devil Wears Prada, Marley and Me, and The Big Year. It's kind of like you check into an Airbnb and you look at the 12 DVDs that they have on the IKEA shelf. I mean, at least two of those probably are gonna be in there, I feel like. What are the other ones? Drillbit Taylor?
Drillbit Taylor feels like it's in there. Runaway Bride, for some reason, I feel like has to be there.
Titanic and Liar Liar.
Oh, wow. Strong. Very strong. Yeah, and then I'm feeling like... Is it Mel Gibson's We Were Soldiers or Hacksaw Ridge? There's got to be one middling war movie for the dads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hacksaw Ridge is, I think, a little too intense. It's maybe... I know. Let's split the difference. It's The Patriot.
Beautiful. Mwah. Mwah. Perfect. It's American history. It's war. It's Gibson. It's everything a dad wants. Okay, so interesting, though, that David Frankel has this background with HBO TV, because it seems that the same applies for screenwriter Vanessa Taylor.
Yeah, you sound like you have more about her than I do, but let me just give a few bullet points. You fill in the blanks here. She starts in TV with films or a TV series like Gideon's Crossing. She's writes on Alias, and she's also a producer there. Everwood.
Yeah.
This is her first feature film. But then after this, she goes on to write episodes of Game of Thrones. She writes the movie Divergent. She co-writes the movie The Shape of Water, which she's nominated for an Oscar for.
What?
And Hillbilly Elegy. So she's got some peaks and valleys here.
Oh boy. From the highest heights of The Shape of Water to the lowest lows of the hagiography of one of the more fascist members of the United States Senate. It's tough, man. It's really tough. Well, so I think she was actually working on Game of Thrones at the time that she wrote this script. I've been in doing some research about her process, because she'd come up through writing on other TV shows. She wrote 3 episodes of Game of Thrones, 2 in season 2, 1 in season 3. She at that time was the only woman in the writers' room for Game of Thrones. So first a hell yeah, and then also a retroactive guys, why?
Come on,
guys. What are we
Hollywood
doing?
To marriage counseling.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my relationship with the entertainment industry is very toxic. But so she wrote this script while she was working on Game of Thrones, and I had thought when watching it at first, like, okay, is this someone with a background in marriage counseling or somebody who has, like, been through couples counseling? And, at the time she wrote it, she was unmarried. She was, significantly younger than the main characters. But, as she said in interviews, this is kind of inspired by her parents' divorce and what they went through. She did a lot of research about marriage and sex counseling, and, her father was a psychiatrist, and so she talked to him a lot about that. But so she wrote this script. The script wound up on the blacklist, according to Meryl Streep, and was on the blacklist for a little while, and people, no studios wanted to touch it because of the subject matter, which I'm assuming is the subject matter of old people having horniness.
Yes.
And then I found the most graceful way to put that. But then Amy Pascal at Sony found it, really liked it, and got Meryl Streep on board, and it happened. But
can we pause for just a second for listeners who might not be so keyed into Hollywood and the inner workings of it, and talk just very briefly what the blacklist is?
Yes, of course. Do you want to sit them down and give them the talk about the blacklist, or should I?
Well, I have a tertiary understanding of it, which is this is how I know it. The blacklist exists as a kind of entity for screenwriters to... I don't know exactly how it gets onto the blacklist. There might be a submission process. Maybe you know about that.
So basically, every year there is an organization called the Blacklist. This is different from the Blacklist in the 50s, which you did not want to be on. This one you do. They go around and they ask producers, agents, managers, people who are reading scripts as part of their job, hey, what were your favorite unproduced scripts of the year? That list of 100 or so scripts is the Blacklist, and that list, yes, and that list gets circulated, and it's like, this is just in the industry. There's the buzz around these scripts. These are the great scripts that no one is producing, and usually once that list comes out, then people, some of those scripts get turned into movies, and with a fair amount of frequency, those movies don't wind up being super great.
Well, and I think because the nature, to me, of the blacklist is more of a calling card. Look at this untapped talent versus, look at this producible, pile of content that we can pick from. And
yes.
Hot take, I think this is one of those movies. I am really on board with its message, what it's trying to do, the representation of it. But as a film, I don't think it's... I think it's better as a script. I think it'd be even better as a book.
Okay.
But as a movie, it's just people sitting in chairs, sitting on couches, or lying down in bed.
It is a very relaxed movie, but not a relaxing movie. You have teed me up for my unified theory of Hope Springs.
Let's do it.
This movie feels so much like a 196-page paperback that was on Oprah's book club list in 2009.
Hell yes.
The logical answer to every question I have about what and why this movie is simply, oh yeah, there was a fuller, more fleshed out version of this that a couple million people, primarily women over the age of 55, read on airplanes and told their friends about. Like, I mean, it's things like, why is this story set in a remote New England town? Why is it named after the town when the town and its residents barely factor into the movie at all? Well,
yeah.
Presumably all those other characters who show up in single one-off scenes were a bigger part of the book, which, mediates more or meditates more on these quirky bystanders, or like questions of like, what did Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones ever see in each other? What did their characters ever love about one another?
Okay.
Surely that must have been explored in a reflective, introspective block of text in the book, or like, or what?
You're already laying down gauntlets of things I'm gonna have to comment upon. And I don't know if you just want to continue laying them down and we break them all open, or how do you want to go about this?
I have one more gauntlet. And then we can start breaking down gauntlets.
Okay.
The greater question of what's Dr. Feld's whole deal?
Yes.
Like what makes his methods so good and so special? Well, this is the thing. He has a week-long course in rural Maine It costs
Yeah.
$4,000. It does not include accommodation, meals, or any
not
of
a
the
resort.
books. No, it's not a resort. And
It's not even really intensive therapy.
No.
To all what I can see is like it's an hour-long sessions 7 days in a row.
Yeah, it's like all that we see. It's not like the Dr. Feld Institute for fixing your marriage and getting your husband to want to have sex with you. It's literally just you talk to Dr. Feld in his office, otherwise known as regular therapy. Like this could be a Zoom call.
If you're gonna put the word intensive on it, give me an electrode.
Yes, exactly.
Like strap someone up to a machine.
Yes, insulin shock therapy, something like that. Men in white coats, stretchers, wheelchairs, padded rooms. A sex swing. I don't know. I mean, yeah, but okay, it's like, okay, well, I'm watching the movie and I'm thinking, presumably in the book, there, Dr. Feld has a bigger presence and and he has a character and this all kind of gets explained, but I would keep forgetting and then being smacked in the face by the fact that no, this is an original screenplay written directly for the screen, and according to Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones in the interview I watched, where Tommy Lee Jones is visibly just furious that he has to be talking to a reporter, they just shot what was on the page, so it's not like stuff was cut out, and I don't want to be mean to Vanessa Taylor, who I think is a good writer, and I think there's a lot of good scenes in this, and she's had way more success in the industry than I ever had. I've never had a script on the blacklist. She's clearly good at what she does. I just don't understand what went on here, I really don't.
Yeah. I have a lot of compliments for Vanessa Taylor, and I think the characterization, the dialogue, I think it's all really probably some of the best we've covered so far, but it's simply the premise of it and the direction. The direction of this is flat. It's uninteresting. No one is doing anything, and it's like, I kind of rally against those screenwriter guru books, but
rightfully so.
This one,
a menace.
I couldn't help but think of the axiom of Pope in a pool, where if you have a character that is going to be divulging a lot of information, or if it's dialogue heavy, set it in an interesting scene. This is literally just watching pages of dialogue be spoken by someone sitting on a couch, and it's shot reverse shot. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, I'm gonna throw this out here real early on. You want to compare this to another film that pivots upon three characters, that's all about relationships, sex, which way the wind blows. Challengers.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre.
Oh,
okay,
no.
But very different.
The movie Challengers. Now, granted, it's about tennis, and there's a lot of like inherent opportunities for movement and innovation with the camera work and stuff.
And three ways,
but the way that they are that Luca handles the dynamic just between in the hotel scene. If you've seen Challengers, the very first hotel scene between the three of them, like the dynamic he creates just with the composition of the camera is so much more psychologically impactful than this kind of bland wallpaper approach to, oh, I know, we'll be inventive in that when they're closer in their conversation, when they're closer in their relationship, they'll sit closer on the couch together. But when they're not, let's have them on opposite sides of the couch.
From the twisted mind of David Frankel. Blocking. What?
And it's like I the whole time watching this, I just wished it were like directed by Alexander Payne.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna explore the inner dimensions of a relationship between characters, like I don't want the gloss. But this is coming from me, and this movie's not made for me. So it's hard to even like stand behind my own criticisms of it.
It's interesting that you call out the directing, because, and now first to call back to the beginning of what you were saying, early on in this movie, I found myself thinking like, holy shit, we got a good one. This is like good. This is like a good movie right out the gate. This is truly like some real film here, and which I credit a lot to the writing. In terms of the directing and being like a lot of just very long shots of a person's face, or a very slow push on someone talking, or a slow pull out from someone talking, that didn't bug me because, folks, I don't know if you know this about me, I'm a Barry Lyndon head. That's my favorite movie, and that movie is 3 hours of very slowly pushing in on a person standing still, or very slowly pulling back.
I've got nothing against that either. I like that a lot, but I don't feel like it's done with a lot of intention here.
You're saying that the direction of Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon is a little more advanced than David Frankel's Hope Springs, and I would agree. I think
oddly, Hope Springs lit entirely by natural candlelight.
David Frankel had to get lenses from NASA to shoot the scene in the movie theater where Meryl Streep tries to give Tommy Lee Jones a blowjob. We'll get to it. So, but these like the directing didn't bug me because this movie, I think, is so. The performances were so good that I didn't really give a shit about the camera work, because in all those long scenes of people sitting on a couch talking, I was so captivated by Meryl Streep. I was so captivated by Tommy Lee Jones. I was hanging on every word, because at the beginning of this movie, with what is established in the first act of this movie, and then they get to therapy, I have this sense of like, okay, something is deeply wrong with Tommy Lee Jones's character. There is something at the center of him that there is pain, there is suffering, and we are going to, over the course of the movie, watch this hard shell get peeled back, and we're going to uncover his secrets, and it's going to be a masterful performance, and I can't wait. And so I'm really like on the edge of my seat for these long takes of his face as he's talking, because I feel like this is all going to build to something. And spoiler alert, the main issue is that he ate too many Cool Ranch Doritos, basically. That's kind of the black heart of their relationship troubles.
I disagree. And in fact, this is where the audience conversation starts to come into play, but maybe we should earmark it and give a little context of like the start of the scene start of the movie before we get to the therapy, just to get a sense of where the characters are.
Yes.
Let's do that, and then I'll come back to what I want to say.
Look, let me preface a description of kind of the first act of this movie by saying I think that this is probably the most depressing movie we've watched, and we watched a movie about the Congolese genocide, so I'm just gonna leave that there. The first 30 minutes of Hope Springs are just a brutally effective and soul-destroying depiction of stifling domestic hell. Like the first thing we see in the movie, the cold open, this is a very quiet movie and a very deliberately paced movie. It's Meryl Streep kind of, she's in the bathroom and she's wearing kind of a nice nightgown, and she's clearly done her hair and makeup a little bit, and is looking in the mirror, trying to psych herself up, trying to feel sexy, trying to feel pretty. Clearly she's trying to go and seek intimacy. She's going to try and go have sex. I'm sorry, seek intimacy. Who the fuck are you, Truman?
That's how the movie would phrase it. I think that was very apt.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Feld got to me. The weird cult leader is finally in my head. But so she kind of builds up her confidence. She goes and knocks on the door of Tommy Lee Jones's bedroom. He's, gruffly sitting in bed reading a golf magazine, and she kind of like, he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing in here? And she's kind of, oh, well, I was sort of thinking we could, and she just, neither of them really says out loud what's on their mind, but she kind of implies, I was thinking maybe we could have sex, and he kind of very quickly first he sort of is angrily dismissive of like, why are you bothering me? Why are you in here? Is it too hot in your room? I can fix the thermostat. And then he realizes what she wants, and he kind of is like, oh, I had pork for lunch, so I can't. And you see her face fall of like this rejection. She's like clearly like hurt by this, but is like trying to soldier on. It's like, oh, that's fine. Okay, well, I'll see you in the morning. And she closes the door and kind of just rushes back down the hall to her bedroom in this just state of total humiliation and rejection. And then we get the main title. That's our cold open for the movie. And, and leading onward from there, the movie is kind of just setting up what their life is. And it's like, every morning she makes breakfast. He does not look at her. He barely regards her. They don't really talk. He just sort of grunts at her. You know, they have their kids over for dinner, and, oh, your 31st anniversary is coming up. What are you doing? Nothing. You know, he doesn't he doesn't show any affection to her or to his kids. She is...
So this is where maybe it just comes down to our different experiences through life, but this relationship, this opening, it is bleak. I would not refute anything you said, but it was very reminiscent of relationships I've seen growing up. You know, whether it's family members or, you know, being over at a friend's house and seeing how their parents interact with one another. Like, this was very much a Midwest relationship that I was very privy to growing up. So I knew exactly where I was with these characters from the get-go. And they're, as an audience member, you know, who you and I, you know, we're not the audience for this movie. So we've been to therapy. We've done some self-reflection. We know, like, we can identify, oh, this is what's wrong right out the gate, even beyond, like, just seeing the rejection of Tommy Lee Jones to Meryl Streep. Like, in that moment when he rejects her in the bedroom saying he had pork, it's not him saying, I had pork. It's him saying, I don't feel comfortable with this. We haven't done this in 4 years. Like, this is out of our routine. I'm not comfortable with it. This is like there's too much we have to unravel before we can even get to this point. Like, even if he's not, the character is aware of it, that is present in what Tommy Lee Jones is playing in that moment.
And he almost, his reaction is almost a little bit like he's scared by the thought of having sex with his wife and is trying to, like, cover for it.
The movie, you know, explicitly addresses later on.
Yeah.
But, okay, and then I'm going to spoiler alert a little bit here for where we go toward the end of this to kind of make my point to what we were talking about earlier, where you said you were, like, preparing for this to build and lead to this big revelation and, you know, all these things. And I think the movie gives us that, but it gives us the transformation in a way that is what the intended audience is there for. The optimism of how you can positively change your relationship. It's not the, like, satisfying character transformation that Truman and Landen, middle-aged former screenwriters, want to see.
Yes.
And I think that Tommy Lee Jones, I mean, both of them, clearly, if you want to know how great of an actress Meryl Streep is, like, forget Sophie's Choice, forget, like, The Iron Lady, which she wins an Oscar for right after this movie.
Forget Mamma Mia.
Watch her in something like this, where it could just be a thankless role in a thankless movie, but the level of detail she puts into the humanity of her character is just, like, so captivating you can't take your eyes off her. Just these little tiny details. But I think equally, Tommy Lee Jones puts in a performance here that is worthy of, like, studying in acting classes.
Yes.
The layers he's putting on, because he could just play this as, you know, man of the house style grumpy curmudgeon.
Yeah.
But there's, like, built-in reasons and layers to how he got that way. And it never loses sight, even though if you can't really outwardly see it, it requires a knowledge of who he used to be, so that you understand where their marriage came from. And maybe you and I differ a little bit there, but, like, I just seeing them at the beginning and the distance that's between them, I still got the sense of how they ended up in this position, you know, why they got together in the first place, why they have stuck it out for 31 years, and why they're now distant yet still married and dealing with it or living with it or, you know, being complacent in it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went all over the place there with that, but
no. I know exactly where you are, and it's a place where I can land and say things because, I mean, look, Tommy Lee Jones is really, really good. In a movie full of good performances, well, in a movie headlined by 2 great performances, his is the better one, and that is to take nothing away from Meryl Streep. But he is, I mean, it's captivating watching him, like, the vulnerability that he starts to show later in the movie as he is, like, starting to actually open up about some things. When there are scenes where he is being happy and smiling and being affectionate and goofy that I think are unearned, and we'll talk about why I think those scenes don't work in the broader context of the film. But taken in a vacuum, off the strength of his character, it's really something to see, and you feel a sort of catharsis in just, like, watching this guy open up. I mean, it's I think real. I feel like I have the tendency to say the word vulnerable on podcasts a lot, and this is going to be a real tough episode because I'm also saying intimate and intimacy a lot. If you want to hear a guy say vulnerable and intimate, and in an episode that starts with a poetry reading, welcome to your favorite podcast. But I like, as an actor and someone with his kind of pedigree, to do a movie like this, which involves sex scenes and a lot of, like, talk about sexual dysfunction and hang-ups and, like, getting a blowjob in a movie theater that doesn't go very well. I mean, that's interesting and commendable, especially for someone like Tommy Lee Jones, who is so famously curmudgeonly. I mean, to the point that, like, his behavior in the first half of this movie, where he is always rude, always mean, always dismissive. I mean, that
which
really...
I would add in there, like, beyond the rejection of that first scene, you know, when she goes into his room at night, it's almost more egregious and more offensive the next morning when he's just going through his morning routine, doesn't even look at her, you know, eats his breakfast that she made for him, barely kisses her, you know, on the cheek, and walks out the door with barely an acknowledgement. That felt more like a rejection to me than him stuttering the night before.
Sure, yes. I mean, it's one thing to not want to have sex when someone asks to have sex. It is another thing to, in the day-to-day moments of your cohabitation, just act as though they aren't there. They're and I think it's all of that put together, which is what made this so really bleak for me. It's like I get that there are, you know, and I've too have seen relationships among older people where it's like, you know, yes, this is not the passionate love that there used to be. Yes, this is kind of a stifling environment, but still, like, there is some kind of interplay between them or something, some kind of acknowledgement. But for him, it really seems as though he is doing his damnedest to ignore his wife entirely and forget that she even lives there, and is, in fact, really upset that she lives in his house. And that is what makes the first 30 minutes, 45 minutes of this movie so brutal for me, is to watch the fact, just when he interacts with her at all, it is usually to either be complaining about something around them, or complaining about something she's doing, or to put down and dismiss anything that she's said and anything that she's suggested.
And yet I've seen this relationship so many times in my life, and that's what is extra depressing to me. It's just like, and okay, I've been tiptoeing around, like, the actual audience for this. Let's just mention it now. You know, this wasn't aimed at me, especially in 2012. I would have been about 30. Mm-hmm. Like, this is aiming at the Sunday matinee retirees, as you said earlier. You know, word of mouth and book club. You know, oh, my husband and I just saw this funny little film. You know, it stars Meryl Streep. You know, and you know, it was pretty good. And then that person goes home and says, oh, you know, Cheryl Ann just said she saw that movie with Meryl Streep, that it was worth seeing. And then they go to the theater. And that's how I think the movie stays in, you know, the top 10 for 4 weeks and makes $100 million plus. Yeah. Is that it has those long legs of the word of mouth crowd of the older audiences. And I've been in the audience with, like, the same audience who's seeing this, you know, the flip side, the male side of this, in, you know, the generational dictates of gender, would be like going to see Ford v Ferrari.
Oh yes, very true. Yeah, this is Ford v Ferrari for the moms, isn't it?
And so I've, often I'm in the audience with that crowd, and I've just seen it reflected so much. I was going somewhere with that, but just some details I think that are kind of interesting is like when they're having their anniversary dinner with their kids, the kids are asking, "Oh, would you get each other?" Because they are presenting them with presents, and they go, "Oh, it's an off year, so we didn't really get each other anything." And then Meryl Streep goes, "Oh, but we did get that new cable subscription, which has a lot of channels, and it really, you already get a sense because we've seen it already that they got the cable subscription because Tommy Lee Jones watches all the golf channels."
Yes, he is either watching golf, he is watching golf analysis, or he is reading golf magazines. In fact, at one point when they are in Maine, they live in Omaha, but they go to Maine, for therapy. He is at one point sitting in the hotel room reading a golf magazine, and I'm like, motherfucker, did you pack golf magazines to read with you in Maine?
I don't know if you've known many golfers. I mean, that is an incredibly true to life thing.
This must be, I mean, yeah, dude, both as a Midwesterner and a golf enthusiast to a certain degree, there must be a lot of kind of haunting echoes of things that you've seen in your life in this film.
There are two things that men over 60 can't let go of. One is the JFK assassination, and the second is improving their golf swing.
Well, I think, speaking of, the kind of viewership patterns of this movie, Lisa Ann recommended it, whatever. The thing that is tough for me in comprehending this movie is that, like, I think that bickering couples in movies are fun. Like, it is fun to watch a bickering old couple where they're going back and forth, they're crotchety. Like, that's just the cornerstone of something funny in a movie is two old people who've been married forever and are angry at each other. That's a laugh riot. But, like, this is not that. This is one person constantly angry, bickering with, not bickering, just putting down the other person, and the other person sadly standing there and taking it, which is not, that's not fun. A fight scene in a movie where two people are punching each other, that is fun. A scene where one person is punching the other one repeatedly while the other person lets them for an hour and a half, not fun.
Well, this also gets into the audience question, because to me, what you're describing is why this film is ultimately forgotten. And, I guess I'll repeat this and summarize it later, but, like, this film is essentially marketed as a comedy. It's even presented tonally as a comedy.
Yeah.
But there's no comedy in it.
It's not
It's really more just, like, a lot of light stuff, or a light tone surrounding a deep, dark, toxic underside. But there's no laughs. There's no situations. Like the blowjob scene in the movie theater is really the biggest, like, oh my God, can you believe? I mean, they're still sitting in chairs, but it's that's the highest height as far as comedy this film goes to, and it ends tragically. Like, it doesn't end on a laugh. It ends on a, oh my God, this is a heartbreaking moment for her.
Yes.
And so bringing it back to the audience, it's catering toward that older crowd who maybe, this might be a bit of a taboo type of movie, content-wise, for them to have to, like, confront their own marriage. And so they want to leave feeling optimistic. They want to feel good going through it, even if it is confronting certain things.
Yes.
And, I think the movie that would appeal more to us is bigger in its laughs, and it is more intentional in its comedy. It's not just light-handed.
Or alternately, the movie that appeals to us is it's basically this movie and a drastically different last 10 minutes, more or less, would also appeal to us. Because I agree with you.
But who cares if it appeals to us? I mean, this is why I like this movie, is that it doesn't have to appeal to us.
It doesn't have to appeal to us, but I think some people care what we think, and that is the people who chose to listen to the podcast, those happy few. And I just, like, this movie is not a comedy. It is steadfastly not. And it's not really trying to be one. Like, this is a drama about a failing marriage where there are occasionally some moments of kind of levity and slice of life, oh, can you believe hey man, the bartender in this town, she's a no-nonsense babe, played by Elisabeth Shue, who was in one scene. But, like, this movie, by and large, is a drama. If it had the drama ending to this is Meryl Streep realizing whatever love, whatever passion, whatever joy and intimacy I am seeking from this relationship is no longer here. I need to get a divorce. And then it's her beginning the process of finding that in her real life and realizing, okay, yes, things change, people move on. But this movie that has been set up like a drama throughout then gets the lighthearted comedy ending, which is just tonally whiplash-inducing for me at least.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking of another. And we got to get into some specifics here, but I was actually thinking of another Steve Carell movie that I think nails this sort of tone much better.
Dinner for
which
Schmucks.
is Dan in Real Life.
Yes.
Which is like it's a comedy, drama, comedy, dramedy, whatever label you want to apply to it, but it more expertly builds to crescendos and has people moving, and there's some, the stakes are very firmly set here, and they're very deeply rooted in the characters, and I really, really appreciate that about this film. But
agreed.
I think we need to get into like specific scenes and what's going on here.
Okay.
So I want to touch on just a few more things in this opening to finish setting the scene. She works at a department store,
Yes.
Coldwater Canyon. That's not it.
No, that is not in Omaha at all. Does it also matter what the department store is? Or
it is in like the details of it. Like I've been to that outlet mall 100,000 times. I've waited outside that store for my mom. Like it's a real thing. She goes to a Barnes and Noble at one point that is like in a strip mall, and I'm like, I know that Barnes and Noble. It's in Livonia. I've been there.
Man.
But she works at this store, this clothing store with Jean Smart, and kind of sets out, I don't know, the log line of this movie. She's asking, do you think you can change your marriage? And Jean Smart's like, no, people don't change. It requires, if you do, risking everything just to shake things up. Why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to show the disquiet in Meryl Streep's thinking in her life. So she goes to the bookstore and starts perusing the self-help section, and she gets so overwhelmed by all the sex books.
Oh, Mr. Firefly! 50 Shades of what?
I grew up in an area where there were a lot of religious people, and I could easily see that reaction coming from a number of people.
I guess I agree, but also there's so many ways in which it's kind of like the characters in this movie are living like 10 years earlier than the time the movie is set in.
That's how people are, though, in the Midwest.
Some
people, not all people, but
you're saying old people in the Midwest might have more conservative viewpoints than the rest of us? Is there any voter data that might bear that out, I wonder?
Anyway, she in perusing the self-help books, she comes to one book called "You Can Have the Marriage You Want" by Dr. Feld, played by Steve Carell, and what?
I'm sorry. I just she's browsing, she's desperate. We know that the stakes of her relationship are very dire and she needs to find something. She picks up this book, How to Fix Your Marriage, or your marriage, this book that will be the key to everything and that we know is the inciting incident for the movie. She turns it over, and to see Steve Carell's picture, to see Michael Scott on the back of the book. This is part of why I think the casting is bad for him, because I'm immediately like, oh boy, what's Michael gonna do now?
You know what, though? As a stepping stone in his career, let's talk about Steve Carell real quick.
Yeah.
So this movie is 2012.
Yeah.
This is like the first big movie he does after he leaves The Office. In 2011.
Big mistake. Bad choice.
I don't know, because it is a good stepping stone to. He's not good here. I can't emphasize that enough. But he's doing something different than Michael Scott that I think starts to push him in a different direction. It's not successful here, but obviously the rest of his career has been somewhat successful. So, where does this fall? Okay, he leaves The Office in 2011.
Yes.
His movie career kind of started in 2005 with The 40-Year-Old Virgin. 2006, he does Little Miss Sunshine, so we see, he has a dramatic side.
Yeah, he's got range, yes.
His movie career just is wildly mixture of quality here. So you got Dan in Real Life in 2007, Evan Almighty in 2007, Get Smart in 2008, Date Night in 2010, Dinner for Schmucks in 2011, Crazy Stupid Love in 2011, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World in 2012. And he does some voice work for like Horton Hears a Who and Despicable Me at that point.
Oh, have those movies made any money? Have those been just? I mean, a lot of what you're mentioning,
quality, not success in the box office.
Like a lot of the movies that you mentioned, like even if the quality is dubious or middling, it's like dude was just printing money with a lot of these.
So okay, all that to say, his picture on the back of this, it is kind of ridiculous, and it's hard not to have that Michael Scott reaction, but I think it's necessary to start having us visualize him a little bit differently. I took a picture of the back of the book. Do you wanna hear how they're marketing Steve Carell's or Dr. Feld's "You Can Have the Marriage You Want"?
Okay. I mean, I do. Okay, yes. Tell me how they're marketing it. I have some counterpoints about Steve Carell that I want to make, but let's hear first how Steve Carell's being sold.
The back of the book says, "You think great marriages are for other people? They're not. Just by picking up this book, you've already proven you have the one thing you need to achieve a great marriage: desire." Every marriage has within it the essential marriage that it was and the exciting marriage that it can be. The secrets to your happiness. Dr. Bernard Feld runs the Center for Intensive Couples Counseling in Great Hope Springs. Great Hope Springs?
Great Hope Springs? You misnamed the movie. God damn it. Okay.
Bernard Feld is a licensed clinical psychologist in practice. He helps clients with relationship issues, anxiety and depression, addiction, and other mental disorders. Addiction is a very specialized thing. I don't know about that. Anyway, he has an impressive range of clinical experience. His training included externships on the locked admissions unit of County Hospital.
What?
Okay.
Wait, it's like people who get sent to jail because their marriage is so bad, and he's like he's going in there Silence of the Lambs style.
Maybe. A large
quid pro quo, put your arms around your wife for 20 minutes.
Well, okay, you're getting a little too close to how I view his character in this movie. A large state psychiatric hospital and in an outpatient counseling center at medical center. Just
okay.
The one, the copy that no one thinks you'll ever read.
Yeah.
One of the country's largest hospitals.
Oh, okay. Being pretty vague here, Dr. Feld, about what your credentials are.
So that's the back of the book. She buys this and she, devours it while eating yogurt in the car. Secretly.
Yes, an intense music montage of her reading a book both at home and in the car while
sitting in the car.
Sitting, always sitting. Look, the thing with why I'm convinced this is the wrong movie for Steve Carell at this point in time. He is coming straight out of The Office. Everyone who's looking at him is seeing Michael Scott. I recognize actors play a variety of characters, whatever. A movie like Foxcatcher, which he made a couple of years later, A, he's wearing facial prosthetics in that, yes. B, he is doing a kind of different voice in that. C, the character that he's playing is a character. The character has stuff about him that you can latch onto, quirks, idiosyncrasies, a background. Dr. Feld is effectively not a character. We get no background on him. We don't get any glimmers of personality. We don't see him interact with anybody else in the movie except the two of them. And that's...
Yeah, but I'm talking more about the brand management of Steve Carell. How do you break away from the Michael Scott character so you can get to a Foxcatcher point?
But you don't break away from Michael Scott with this role where you are playing someone who has nothing. So the only thing that an audience coming into this movie has to hold on to, like, in terms of what this bland, featureless character is, oh, hey, it's the funny guy from that sitcom. And the thing is that, like, the thing that this character has to do is sit there and ask Tommy Lee Jones questions about how often he masturbates, and it's like you can't see that happening, and you can't hear Michael Scott's voice and see Michael Scott's face asking that question and not immediately think you're watching The Office. It's just the wrong choice of actor for this type of role at this time.
Let's skip ahead a little bit. I've got a quote here from Dr. Feld, and let's transition this into talking a little bit about his character.
Okay.
What little there is. I want to highlight your point here. This is a quote off of IMDb.
Okay,
Dr.
great.
Feld. We are going to talk extensively about your sexual history, when it started, what it included, what it didn't include, if you had orgasms, vaginally or otherwise, if you had issues around sexuality or performance, whether you talked about sex or during it, what your fantasies are, if you ever acted on those fantasies, brought toys or sex games into the bedroom, brought sex out of the bedroom. And once we've explored all those things, I will give you your first sexual, not sex, but sexual exercise. All right, let's get started. Arnold, where would you like to begin?
It is this movie's version of Alec Baldwin's monologue in Glengarry Glen Ross, you know? Sex toys are for closers.
So there's a like, I don't envy Steve Carell in this movie. Like, I mean, I've done projects where I've had to interview people for, you know, an extended period of time on camera. And like to have to sit there and be engaged with them, eye contact, you know, and really be in the moment with them for, you know, over an hour, it gets exhausting.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that to the Dr. Feld character. I'm saying that to the Steve Carell of it, where he has to sit in a chair and pretend to be enlightened, to pretend to be empathetic, and really be connected with Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones in every single shot that he's in. Like, that is exhausting, and it's thankless, and it comes off, you know, I don't know how someone can do a good performance out of that. It's just designed to fail.
Sure.
And, you know, like, it could have failed a lot more, but
sure.
It comes off creepy.
You know,
let's go into Dr. Feld here.
Okay, to go into Dr. Feld, I will quickly take us to just these two crazy kids getting to Maine. Basically, Meryl Streep reads the book. She watches. She goes to Dr. Feld's 2003 ass website and watches a herky-jerky 2003 internet video of him basically saying.
Does that make you feel more like it's Michael Scott too, because it's so much of him talking to the camera?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just a bunch of choices that were just wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
Watches this video of him. She, in the morning, goes to Tommy Lee Jones, says, I want us to go to couples counseling to try and, you know, get our marriage back on track. I have already paid for it. I am leaving at 10 a.m. tomorrow. He is furious.
He shuts it down immediately.
Furious. Our marriage doesn't have any problems. Therapy is a scam. That money could have been a new roof for the house. You're an idiot. I mean, he doesn't really say that, but he makes clear in his tone. Like, he's just absolutely categorically no. And she's like, well, I'm going to go. The flight leaves at 10. She, you know, in the morning leaves. He watches her leave. He does not go with her. She's sitting on the plane, and the plane is about to close the door to take off, and then he comes running onto the plane, sits down next to her, and you're thinking like, oh, okay, is this our first glimmer of something opening? He goes like, this had better be worth it. I don't want to be here. And he just grumbles the whole way to Maine. They get to Maine. They drive a few hours from the airport to Hope Springs. And he's just complaining and angry about everything. The travel lodge they're staying at, the food is a ripoff, it's too expensive at the diner. Mad, angry. How dare you do this to us? This is such a waste. And then they get to therapy with Dr. Feld. They after 30 minutes of watching Meryl Streep get browbeaten and belittled by Tommy Lee Jones, finally we're rescued by who? Michael Scott from NBC's The Office.
I think it's worth mentioning because it bookends Tommy Lee Jones's character that he does go to work. He has a boring ass Omaha job.
He's an accountant
working in finance, and he speaks to a coworker at one point who says something about how his marriage didn't work out, and you know, wishes that he had worked harder at it. And this kind of is in that in between moment of Meryl Streep presenting the idea, and the next morning when she goes, so that it plants a seed in his head of like, oh, he should work harder. He brings her earrings that night as kind of a a
peace
olive
offering.
Branch,
Yeah.
and she's like, it's more than that. I'm still going, and the earrings had no effect on her, and so I think
our traditional weapons are useless.
when the next morning comes, I think he's still of the mindset of like, oh, I'm calling her bluff. And when she actually gets in the taxi and leaves, he's like, okay, I have to go through the motions here just to get this back on track. And that's what gets him on the plane, because he realizes that not doing it is going to be a bigger headache than actually going through with it.
Yes, he resolves to do the bare minimum of going with her, but he's going to put her down and shame her for wanting to do this the entire way, every step of the process. Arms crossed, strongly frowning, glaring at everyone.
And okay, so this is where I found it hard to like figure out how to talk about this movie, because the devil, it really is not in Prada. But in the details.
Perfect relationship. We finish each other's hacky jokes.
Where like the reality of their relationship comes from like they can have a fight, but she's still making him 2 eggs and 1 strip of bacon the next day because she knows exactly what he likes. She's just not going to sit there and while he eats it. When they go to Hope Springs, she has booked not at the fancy hotel that she would like to stay at. She knows that getting him there is going to be hard enough, so she has booked the Econo Lodge, which is going to be much more to his frugal tastes.
Yes.
And so then the Econo Lodge kind of becomes this drab backdrop to represent where they are in their marriage. This representational and like it's a drab thing to look at visually on screen in a movie of beds, couches, and chairs.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is one of the most depressing places you can see 2 people sitting still or lying down.
Yeah, not
touching each other.
And like there's more little things that I think are very true to life, and it's in what's not said, and it's the little not microaggressions, but micro avoidances, where they get to the Econo Lodge and she's like, well, it's just a queen size bed, and she's like, well, I guess I'm gonna go to bed, and she's standing next to it in her nightie and her not negligee, just her nightgown.
Yeah, it's a nightgown.
And and he's like, okay, well, I guess I'll go see how the pullout works, and he heads out there, and she's like, you can see like the flash of disappointment on her face,
fucking
in a
depressing.
great Meryl Streep moment.
Yeah.
But then, as he's like struggling to get the pullout, she's like, let me do it, and then she goes in there and does it for him. Like, I can't tell you. I mean, I maybe haven't seen that specific thing, but instances like that where they're fighting, but they're also self-dependent on each other, codependent on each other for things.
I mean,
it's really realistic to me.
I guess my main takeaway is listeners, if you're in the Midwest, it gets better. There's a better world out there. I know, Landon, you have voluntarily relocated to
Feld?
The Midwest. Yes, yeah. Come to the small town where I have my institute, and I tell you to commit lewd acts in public as part of my process. I want to just quickly highlight, and this is stupid, Tommy Lee Jones is complaining a lot about money. We can't afford this. We can't afford that. He is a managing partner at this major accounting firm in downtown Omaha. Like, obviously he's a frugal, stingy old man, but it's like you can afford it, dog. You can afford it. It's fine.
Well, I mean, listen, he has a certain middle class way of life to maintain, and he's put 3 kids through college.
Is it 3 kids or only 2?
Or maybe it's 2 plus a marriage, I guess, like a plus 1.
I guess, yeah. Well, I mean, because I think they have a baby at the end of it. I don't know. It's not really important dissecting the lives of their children who do not factor into this movie at all.
No, they
barely
don't.
even mentioned.
All right, so they get to, it's day 1 finally at to meet Dr. Feld.
Yeah.
Reset the stage here. Nonstop complaining. She wants to change the relationship. He doesn't think there's any reason to do this. It's a big ripoff. It's all, a waste of money.
Yeah.
So they get to Dr. Feld, and let's just talk about the Dr. Feld character. You said he is like a cult leader. I said he's like a serial killer, but I want to amend that to being what would you call in the Me Too vernacular?
Oh boy.
The kind of control freak who gets off on other people's sexual details.
I don't know necessarily if there's a word for that, nor do I want to try and reach out and grab one right now when I'm being recorded. But, I mean, honestly, so many of the scenes with him, it's just like, oh, thank God there is an outside source of help for Meryl Streep. Finally, someone is going to, like, protect her from this guy who is just putting her down and being shitty to her constantly. So I can't really, like, focus in on, like, how weird any of the stuff he's saying or talking to them is, because part of it is, well, I guess this is just what couples therapy is, and I presume couples therapy involves a lot of frank discussion of sex and things like that, and I think it calls for, a couples therapist to be someone who feels comfortable speaking bluntly and openly and asking the tough questions, which might sound sort of creepy to us, but then also some of his methods do seem like cult leader behavior, like gang initiation behavior.
The bigger question is the town in his cult, because the stranglehold he has over a number of establishments in this town is daunting, to say the least.
A whole damn town, the whole town of Hope Springs, which is again very remote, potentially only accessible by ferry. Seems to be entirely dependent on Dr. Feld's practice, and all of the locals are just used to the fact that there is a constant stream of unhappy people in failing marriages coming to town and patronizing its establishments, which,
I mean, on one hand I was going to go, is there any worse kind of tourism? But then I realized that's just tourism.
Yeah, especially in quaint New England towns. That's really the place where it's like, well, let's try and spice up our relationship by going to a bed and breakfast.
I feel like I have seen Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones in like the souvenir shop in Monterey Bay, California on a vacation once.
Yes. Solvang, California is chock-a-block full of Meryl Streeps and Tommy Lee Jones. Do you think... I want to ask you, in terms of small towns in Maine, which one has more cursed vibes? Is it Hope Springs, which is full of people in unhappy marriages, so many of them that at any given time, like 20% of the town is people who hate each other? Or is it Castle Rock, where Pennywise lives?
That's a damn good question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's set in Maine, but there's a film called Dead and Buried.
Mm-hmm.
A horror film directed by Gary Sherman, where Jack Robertson, who plays the grandpa in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, plays this mad scientist who's been bringing like sailors and stuff back to life.
Nice.
Maybe that town, but it's a toss up between that and Hope Springs.
Yeah. I mean, either really much like the guy in that movie, like Dr. Feld is a mad scientist who's trying to bring relationships back to life. But
all right, I've got a few like genuine notes here, and I've got a few goofy notes. And I'm gonna go with this one. I'm gonna build on your theory here. Well, no, I'm not. I'm gonna give you a different theory.
Well, you're playing 3-card Monty with his theories.
You have no idea where the theory actually is. Pick a hand.
Landon Solano and his 52 assistants. Okay.
Do you think Elisabeth Shue is the ex-wife of Steve Carell?
Okay. So there is a scene after their first therapy session, which just doesn't go well, folks. Like they are in the room. Tommy Lee Jones is refusing to engage with anything or discuss anything, and finally Meryl Streep just explodes at him, yells at him that he's a bully and he's terrible.
This is actually after the second date, but go ahead.
Okay, I don't know. As I said in a text, time moves a little differently in Hope Springs. possibly because of the cult. But she goes storming out and runs off, and she runs to the local bar to get a drink, and the bartender is played by Elisabeth Shue. And I think if she's Dr. Feld's ex-wife, then I don't know why she stayed in the town, you know? Like, the town where he controls everything, seemingly, where he is, like, the puppet master of...
Well, separate from your opinion, I mean, yeah. I mean, well, why should she be forced to leave?
I mean, okay, well...
Maybe he's the asshole here who's, like, aggressively staying... You know, like, listen, if you read this as him being a creep, like, him staying in the town where she, you know, has roots, she grew up here, like, clearly this is a bar she's, you know, put a lot of time and effort into, and he's just like, nope, I can have my practice anywhere, I'm gonna have it here, you can never be rid of me, I'm gonna have a stranglehold on this town, you will never forget me.
a more interesting movie. I mean, look, certainly she shouldn't have to leave. I'm just saying, if I'm trying to start over again and my options are the town where I grew up, where now my weird therapist ex-husband is the puppet master of everything, I mean, you know, she should make whatever choice she wants. The reason that I feel bad for Elisabeth Shue in this movie, bartender Elisabeth Shue, who's also like... You know, everybody else in this town, everybody else in this movie, it's pretty naturalistic. They look like normal folk, you know, character actors, background actors. Elisabeth Shue is just a certain kind of beautiful, and seeing her is like getting whipped in the face with a brick of gold, and it really stands out. And I'm thinking about just like how much it must suck to be her. In like, you're working at seemingly the only bar in the town that is exclusively visited by people in failing marriages. Like, how many, you know, middle-aged men on the verge of a divorce are coming in here to get a shot of Jack Daniels and hitting on you and like eyeballing you as like the next step in their life after they get a divorce? Like, that must be...
But if you knew going into it that you would have to endure all of that, but one day Meryl Streep will come in.
I mean... I suppose worth it. And seemingly Meryl Streep is there for a while. Like, there's only one scene of Elisabeth Shue in the bar with her, which is a shame. I was kind of assuming that, oh, okay, this is going to be a supporting character and a subplot where she's hanging out at the bar and discussing what she's learned. No, not really. But
3 lines max.
Yeah. Do you think they flew Elisabeth Shue out to Maine for this movie, or wherever the hell they shot it?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's it's called The Intimacy of Hope Springs, the Making of, or something like that, on the DVD that I watched. And this whole thing shot on location. I think the only thing they made, and it was just attached to something in Hope Springs, was the marquee to the movie theater.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well... all these major actors playing minor characters all just kind of got a free trip to northern Maine out of the deal. I mean, that's not...
I mean, look, if you're Elisabeth Shue and you're like, hey, do you want to come film for 2 days a scene with Meryl Streep in New England? Who the fuck would say no to that?
No, look, certainly I wouldn't. I mean, and I mean, do you think... how much of the movie's $30 million budget was just buying plane tickets for all of these you know, big actors, first class to fly to Maine?
Here's something I want to say about the Dr. Feld character in a more genuine note here, which is Steve Carell comes off creepy in trying so hard not to make these lines creepy. Yes. And I think that's where the kind of cult leader vibe comes off. And listen, no therapist is exactly the same. None of them work off a script. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Varying degrees of bluntness. However, the way that he presents ideas and vocabulary in this feels very off-putting because it doesn't feel authentic to the way a therapist would do it, in my regard. Now, granted, I haven't been to a marriage counselor, but there's a certain, like, he's leading the charge here, where in so much therapy, you let the patients lead the charge.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the difference between intensive therapy and regular ass boring therapy. But the other part of this is, like, he has to use this terminology. I think the script mandates it because this is where the quote unquote comedy comes from for those older audiences. Like, oh my God, can you believe how taboo, how blunt he was being with them? Like, can you imagine being in that situation and someone asking you about your oral sex history?
Yeah.
And because the script kind of mandates him use this kind of blunt language, and it being contrary to how my experience with therapists are, it comes off feeling like he's just kind of a deviant. Like, I'm taking copious notes. There are hidden tape recorders in this room that I can listen to and review later of you telling me about the details of your sexual fantasies.
I'll read a quote here. Dr. Feld, was it the missionary position? Arnold on top? K, oh yeah. Dr. Feld, was it always missionary position? Arnold, oh please. K, mostly yes. Dr. Feld, were there particular things that you enjoyed doing? Like, it is just him pretty much just interviewing them, asking very, like, matter-of-fact, very blunt questions in unsparing terminology about their sex life while making direct, unblinking eye contact with them.
Yeah, and maybe that's, again, the intensive part, where it's like, in normal therapy, we would, take the time to learn what, your, preference for talking about this and, the terms you want to use, and we'll get there. And his version is, this is intensive. There's no time for that. I'm cutting through the bullshit. I'm just going to use the terms, and you're going to be okay with them.
This is what you pay $4,000 for and travel across the country. He uses blunt terms, and he looks you dead in the eye and does not look away. For the sake of time, why don't we start talking like this, where one of the things Dr. Feld does with them is starts to assign them homework assignments after each session. Yes.
Let's start talking about the different homework assignments.
Yes, this is kind of what is foreshadowed in his opening monologue, where he says, I will give you your first sexual exercise. Yeah. But yeah, so the first assignment he gives them is just restoring basic intimacy. He assigns them to spend a period of time that night with their arms around each other. Yes. I think, it's the prospect of that which causes the first blow up, because Tommy Lee Jones is so determined to just not touch his wife under any circumstances. And then that night, basically after they've split up and everything, they both come back to the hotel. Tommy Lee Jones grudgingly agrees to do it. They get into bed, and he's like, it's so awkward, them lying in the same bed. And then she starts to, he's like, maybe just lying in the same bed is enough, he says. Like, he's already trying to weasel out of it. And then she, starts to reach over towards him, and he throws up a hand and blocks her hand immediately, reflexively. Yeah. And she's like, I was just trying to turn off the light. And then they basically very awkwardly, kind of wrap their arms around each other and lie there. And so this is the thing. Up until this point in the movie, I'm looking at this still in this mindset of, okay, there is some deeper darkness to Tommy Lee Jones's character, like the fact that he instinctively is throwing up an arm to block his wife from touching him, that he is so resistant to touching her at all. This is me thinking, okay, he has trauma that is going to get uncovered in subsequent sessions with Dr. Feld. There is a real issue here. Also, coming into this, I think at this point in therapy sessions, it's been revealed why they're sleeping in separate rooms, which is basically, years ago, he painted one of the kids' rooms, and it fucked up his back, and it wound up just being easier for him to sleep alone, so he was sleeping in the guest room. But even after his back cleared up, he kind of just stayed there. And it's like, yeah, man, I snore a little bit, I got some sleep apnea, it's better if I'm in there, he's just doesn't want to talk about the why of it. And I'm thinking, okay, but this is an excuse, we're gonna get the why of it.
I don't think that's true. I think we get the why of it, and I would almost say it is a sort of trauma.
Well, okay. Well, then what is the trauma? That she didn't want to have sex with him because, as she explains, his breath is so bad because he eats the Cool Ranch Doritos.
That was just a petty throw-in, as people do to in that scene that they're talking about. I think it's a really well developed and realistic explanation for how you get to a point with people where they end up in separate rooms, and they start to I think it's on day 4 they start talking about, well, day 3 they start talking about their sexual fantasies, and then day 4, well, I don't know what day it is anyway, but they start getting into it, and he starts saying, well, did you ever try again after that? And she says, no, I didn't. And he says, yeah, you pulled away. You didn't want it. You told me that, it wasn't something you wanted, and I was respecting that. And there's a certain amount of, and she agrees. She's like, you're right. For a time there, I did pull back. I didn't want it. And it's not explicitly said, but there's a certain, like, to me, understanding of, like, a kind of martyr complex. I
see.
Put it out there, and I was rejected. I'm not used to being rejected. That's why I have control issues in this marriage.
Okay.
And I'm holding this marriage together by being a martyr for the things I want but can't have for her. Yeah, and that's where resentment starts to start to come out, and that's where the curmudgeonly stuff starts to come out. And I think it becomes the painting, the colors in which this marriage has been painted with.
And that's a good point. That's a good point. I'm glad that we worked through this dispute and I'm able to see your point of view, because you're right. It's she is saying how he only wanted it. He didn't want to kiss me. He didn't want to be romantic with me. So then I didn't want it with him. And then, yes, he has, like, taken this rejection, and he's talking about how I didn't go see other women. I didn't go to strip clubs. I looked at a little porn, but who doesn't, you know? And so I guess, you can see how
you
it
gloss over.
Yeah.
You gloss over, I think, like, the biggest revelation, at least for Meryl Streep's character in the eyes of Tommy Lee Jones, which is he wanted it, and I wanted him to want me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
that is, like, I can easily see that being a seed for sexual dysfunction between people.
Sure.
Of, and how that, when it's not talked about, you can end up going 31 years of marriage and being in the position they're in, or 5 years and not having sex.
Yeah. Regardless, fair point. I maybe was not giving the movie enough credit, but to go back to their homework assignment, they awkwardly, haltingly put their arms around one another. They lie there, and then we cut to the morning. They have both fallen asleep that way. She is, we are tight on Meryl Streep. She opens her eyes. His arm is still draped over her, and you see this, large, bright smile bloom across her face. And this next cut is where I realize, I might not be in good hands, because we cut to them in therapy, sitting right next to each other, Tommy Lee Jones smiling and laughing and, like, kind of, like, being sweet with her and say, and I'm like, whoa, wait. I was expecting a gradual unfolding of everything, and now he has gone 0 to 6 million in terms of, like, 1 minute he was furious about this whole thing. They slept in the same bed with their arms around each other once, and now it's just like, hey, yeah, this is great. What do you got next for me, Doc? I'm on board with this process.
This is, I'm not saying the movie, succeeds, really, but I differ from you a little bit, where I understand Tommy Lee Jones's character in this moment, because, I mean, they start the exercise, holding each other so awkwardly. It's not working. He has that deflection reaction. But then when they wake up the next morning, it's a different shot, and, like, it's more like comfortable couple, he's spooning her. He's big spooning her.
Yeah.
And, like, it seems more natural. And from what I got out of watching Tommy Lee Jones in this next scene is very much this kind of masculine problem-solving thing. Like, oh, yes, you gave me a homework assignment, and I aced it. We're going to fucking I'm going to get an A on this test, and we are going to be out of here in less than 7 days. We're going to, be the best students you ever had because I'm a fucking dude and know how to problem solve.
Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, I guess that's, he's smiling because he's satisfied with himself, not so much that he is happy to be in his relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, what you're saying is like, and I agree, it could be another movie where it does this gradual, peeling back of the layers. But this movie, what it does instead is it's kind of a give and take. Like, okay, now Tommy Lee Jones is a little more on board, and therefore Steve Carell pushes a little bit further on day 3, and they start asking about sexual fantasies and being more specific with their sexual history, and immediately Tommy Lee Jones retracts again, and he gets, more uncomfortable. He does... He plays the game a little bit, and ends up talking about some of his sexual fantasies, which, well, go ahead. You're gonna say something, but I want to comment on that too.
Well, no, and of course, I just wanted to say that, like, Tommy Lee Jones, by the way, in all these scenes of where he's then made uncomfortable by the sexual nature of the questions that Dr. Feld is very intently asking with unbroken eye contact, like, it's a very convincing and compelling performance of the way he is telegraphing his discomfort, the way he, like, is picking up a newspaper to look at or fiddling with his hands or everything. And I don't know if these scenes, presumably in the trailer, are being cut up to emphasize the comedy and the, oh boy, can you believe it? But it's...
Yep. I've got some trailer moments.
I have more questions about the trailer for this movie than for any other movie we've watched. But, he retreating back into this shell... And like that is kind of the quote, if we're going to use more archaic terminology from screenplay books, this is sort of the fun and games of the movie. I think that which is literally the stuff that shows up in the trailer of the movie. This is the premise of the film being played out, is like, oh man, this gruff old guy has to talk about his sexual fantasies, which he doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
Do we want to, here, I'm making direct eye contact with you and speaking very controlled tone.
And I'm listening.
Landon, why don't you tell me about some of Tommy Lee Jones' sexual fantasies with his wife Meryl Streep in this movie?
Well, it takes some goading, but he finally, admits to, wanting to have a threesome between Kay and, Meryl Streep and one of their neighbors.
Yes.
Carol with the corgis.
Yes.
But I don't want to, like, dwell on his sexual fantasies. What I think is important from this scene is that Steve Carell asks both of them, and Meryl Streep is hard-pressed to think of anything. She's like, well, I guess I just think of... I don't even know what Tommy Lee Jones' character's name is.
His name is Arnold. Hey, Arnold.
Arnold, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I just think of Arnold and things we've done, but, I stopped thinking about it a long time ago. She says she doesn't masturbate anymore, and...
And also, like, she reveals that, basically she thinks about stuff that she and Arnold have done in the past, and this is the only time that Steve Carell's character seems, like, shocked, is like, wait, you never fantasize about things you haven't done? And she says, no. Right. And I'm almost thinking, like, that seems like bad couples therapy to make somebody, like...
Yes.
Raise your eyebrows at someone's sexual history. Like, there's a million ways to be a person and to be horny about stuff. Like, that's not the weirdest thing in the world by a long shot.
I flagged that as well, but Steve Carell, like, pulls it back from the brink right at the last second of being a little too judgmental. I think he pivots well, because it's really like him realizing where he's starting from with Kay, and I think that's the point of the scene, is like the disparity of, and what comes into play later when they do try to have sex for the first time in forever. There's a problem, and I'm sorry, it's after she fails to give him oral sex in the movie theater, which
we need to talk about because we've been foreshadowing that, and I think listeners are like, wait, hang on, excuse me.
It's the next homework assignment, so we'll get there in a second. But when she fails to give him oral sex in the movie theater and runs away crying, he tries to go, hey, it's not a big deal, like, you're just not that experienced with it. And I think that's what the revelation of her character in this moment is. Like, she's never allowed herself or been taught or been exposed to these ideas to allow herself permission to go down there. And it's kind of hinted, this kind of religious background. It's never explicit, but this kind of sheltered life, you get the sense they're sharing 31 years here, and if you look at the age of their kids, like, they were probably married right when they got pregnant. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
don't get the sense that they were teenagers when they got married, but
I mean, well, yeah, there's some story about, like, I think it was, like, I feel like they were in college or something like that. She tells about their history early on, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It got overshadowed by some of the public sexual acts that happened shortly thereafter.
But anyway, the point being, like, they are on very different pages with their sexual history and their desires, and I think that's what this scene is highlighting, of, like, it hasn't even begun to fantasize, and he knows exactly what kind of fantasies turn him on.
Yes, but both the concept of having a three-way with their neighbor, and then also he expresses he has a fantasy about Kay blowing him at the office under his desk. I'm sorry, performing oral sex on him under the desk. We're all adults here. God,
we got real HBO with it for a second.
That's what got us real HBO. Landon comes from a more conservative background, it's just different, but these things, it's these little differences again that keep our relationship strong. So Steve Carell says, "I think you're ready for your next homework assignment. It's a little ambitious, but here you go." And then
Okay.
Yes.
I have questions about this because it's supposed to be like a comedic beat that he's like, okay, you might be a little uncomfortable with this next one, and then it like cuts to them going to the movie theater.
Yep.
After talking about oral sex for this whole scene.
Yeah.
He never explicitly says you're gonna go have oral sex in this movie theater, but is that the homework assignment he gave them?
I mean, I feel like I feel like it has to be, right? These people aren't going to dream this idea up themselves. Like, Meryl Streep just confessed to never having had a fantasy about a thing that hasn't happened. The first thing you jump to isn't, let's go to the only movie theater in town which is inexplicably showing a French comedy with subtitles.
Which is, the movie is the French version of Dinner for Schmucks, starring Steve Carell.
When I read that on IMDb, I hooted and hollered. I feel like that little Easter egg was thrown in there for all the diehard Steve Carell cinematic universe fans. They're all elbowing their girlfriends in the theater, or patting them on the head, depending on what's going on in the theater at that point. But so I think the impression I get is that Dr. Feld said give him a blowjob in a movie theater, and they are complying with this. But that just, to me, begs the question, like, does he tell people to do that a lot? Like, are they the first people who've done that?
It's I don't know. Day 5 homework. It's on the syllabus. You knew that when you signed up.
I get it's just because this is a crime, for the record, and I'm not trying to be the fun police here. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying this is your therapist recommending you engage in something that is like indecent exposure. Like, Pee Wee Herman went to jail for something sort of like this.
And the next day she goes back on day 6. It seems like, is that the day where they start seeing him independently of one another? Like,
it's we're intercutting between their solo sessions
and she's like, I guess I'm just not cut out to perform an illegal act in public. And Steve Carell gives this kind of like knowing grin of like, it's not a big deal. I have a stranglehold on this town. No one would have arrested you.
I own the police.
I mean, it almost was explicit of him going, I asked you to do something illegal, and my bask in the power of the Feld. I mean,
this is the cult leader stuff. It's like, I'm like, this is the part in the documentary about the cool self-help group that all the trendy young people are joining, where suddenly it's like, wait a second, I think the guy running this is actually doing it. Like, have him do one kind of fucked up thing to show that they're pliable, and then you start ratcheting it up. But so
on day 7, which we don't see much of, he's asking them to give up their worldly possessions and move to Hope Springs.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Buy a gun and file the serial numbers off of it. You'll need it later. Don't ask me why. But the point is just to they're in the theater. There's other people in the theater who and she is trying to give him a blowjob. It's an awkward experience. She's down on her knees. I don't need to explain too much of this, but basically there winds up being too much teeth, and it becomes he has to caution her about that a couple times, and finally she runs up, running out of the theater in tears. There's one moment, like, Tommy Lee Jones is sort of dubious about the whole thing. He at first doesn't love also that it's a French film, but then he kind of quickly gets on board with the movie itself. But then, as she's down there is about 2 seconds of Tommy Lee. They've bought popcorn. They've both got popcorn. They went to concessions. I mean, but popcorn, but no drinks. I mean, one of you is going to want to wash your mouth out, but they're in there. And there's about 2 seconds of her doing it before everything goes horribly wrong, where Tommy Lee Jones is watching the movie and getting a blowjob from his wife, and there's this look on his face of kind of like, this is awesome, I'm glad I came to Hope Springs. Like, he's kind of like nodding and grinning and eating popcorn. It has this real look of like, king in the castle, all right. And it's kind of...
Which, like, if this movie, I don't know, the moment was... weird to me
for a number of reasons.
Like, this feels like it is a moment from the higher pitched comedy we're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
Where, it should be an R-rated sex comedy starring Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep, but it's a PG-13 sex drama, and this moment, like, just is kind of, I mean, it's intended to be awkward to watch, and
but this feels like National Lampoon Presents Hope Springs. It really does.
Yeah, well, and I guess, I don't know. I mean, poor Meryl Streep, or Kay, I should say, her character, like, is this really the scenario you want to be, like, on your knees on a sticky movie theater in a cramped space to be
terrible
doing this for the first time in 20 years, 30 years,
if not your life, really? I mean, I think it is therapy malpractice on multiple levels. You have put her in a really tough. This woman who has placed all of her trust in you and paid you a bunch of money,
and it was a big hit to her her confidence.
Yes,
and so then the next homework assignment he gives to her.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to write you something for your anxiety. And he walks over, the only time he gets up out of his chair, he walks over to his desk.
He has
writes
legs.
something on a prescription pad.
Mein Führer, I can walk. Okay.
He writes something on a prescription pad, hands it to her, and she kind of raises her eyebrow.
The number of different thoughts I had about what was on the prescription pad as the next scene played out. Like, first thing I'm thinking is, like, is there some kind of like gag reflex suppressant, or like that she, like, what did he, I'm sorry, I don't know, what's the prescription for giving better blowjobs? Like, what is this?
She goes to the bookstore, second bookstore scene in this movie, and she's afraid, she's like asking for the self-help section. And the kind of stoner dude behind the counter is like, oh, we got stuff in the back. The only bookstore that keeps inventory in the back rather than all on the shelves.
Seriously.
And she's like, okay, I need help with this. And she discreetly hands him the note. And he goes, oh, yeah. And pulls out a copy. The prescription was for a book called...
I have the title if you need it.
Oh, I have the book in front of me, sir.
Whoa! Holy shit!
Sex Tips for a Straight Woman from a Gay Man.
Yes. And...
This is a real book.
Yeah, I mean... I'm not surprised that it's a real book. It seems like a totally normal kind of book. What I'm surprised about is that both she and the shopkeeper at the bookstore are treating Sex Tips for Straight Women from a Gay Man like it's the Necronomicon, when really I feel like I feel like I could open a little free library in certain neighborhoods in suburban Portland and see this, and I'd be like, "Oh, cool." Like
I'm sure there are some here in Madison.
Yes, exactly. Any town with a mid-sized university in it, like, I don't know. It's just
Shout out to Room of One's Own. I'm sure the little libraries around them probably have it.
We go into this scene with her like looking around the bookstore, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, there's some sex book he wants her to get, and then she's having this back and forth with the guy at the counter who's like kind of a hippie looking dude, and I'm like, wait, did Dr. Feld write her a prescription for like weed? And she's gonna like, and this guy is the hookup, and he's gonna like sell her some weed, and we're gonna have like Meryl Streep smoking weed to get frisky with Tommy Lee Jones. Because I'm like, okay, movie, I'm back. And no, it was just this book that is so racy and so obscene that it must be kept underneath the counter only for patients of Dr. Feld.
Again, another stranglehold he has over this town.
So you have the book. You own the book?
No, it's on Hoopla.
Oh, I see.
So I borrowed it, and I've got the table of contents here. I've also opened it roughly to where there's a moment where she's reading it. She goes to the grocery store to buy a phallic-shaped food for her to practice on. She goes through like a hard salami that's too big and doesn't work. She ends up, clearly on some bananas, easy peasy.
Why would that not be your first choice? They're bright yellow, easy to see, and they're usually kind of close to the front. I don't know. Maybe I'm focusing on the wrong stuff.
But when she's practicing in the bathroom before this big date that they have, where I believe they're both expecting to have sex that night, and so she's trying to like build up her confidence in her knowledge base, and as she's reading this in the bathroom secretly, she has it opened, and I try to estimate, based on the table of contents of this book, where she would be. So like
this is good research, by the way. This is the work that other podcasts don't do. Yes.
Thank you. I mean, so chapter 1, do's and don'ts. Chapter 2, properly appointed bedroom. Chapter 3, penis primer.
Oh.
Chapter 4, primi piatti, lips tips, stuff like that.
Okay.
Manual labor. You know how to whistle, don't you? Just put your lips together and... Anyway, so play ball is the next one. So I was going through, like, trying to estimate, okay, she's trying to learn about giving a better blowjob or hand job or just dealing, her workings around the penis. And I came up with this as a diagram that she was probably looking at, because as she's holding the book in the scene, holding the banana, trying to like do one to the other, she gets so engrossed in the book and the diagram, she's turning the book sideways, trying to like really get all angles on it, and she gets so lost in it she starts eating the banana. But I just sent you the screenshot of what I believe the diagram is that she was looking at.
Okay, well, this is going to be fun. Well, this picture loads. Who knows what? Oh, interesting. I am most perplexed by the diagram of the penis. It looks like an airplane joystick, and I mean, I guess that I mean, I don't know. This just doesn't look like a lot of dicks that I've seen, and I guess I haven't seen. I get the gay man probably knows better what a dick looks like than me, so fine.
I mean, in the first, or the diagram is like it's 5 different illustrations of hand technique. I mean, there's clearly a shot of like an on-off switch, so I think it's supposed to be a vibrator or a dildo instead of an actual penis, which is gonna be, I think, less detailed to have to draw. Also, there's another illustration in the same vein a few pages later of someone like holding a sack, and it's like supposed to be like a burlap sack filled with sand or something, and it clearly looks like a paper sack filled with sand. So I don't think they're trying to be realistic with their illustrations.
Okay, all right. I withdraw my complaint about this book, which I have not read. So she's doing the homework, she's doing the research, and at the same time as she's doing the work, like Tommy Lee Jones, well, Steve Carell has been writing a prescription for this book for Meryl Streep. In his one-on-one session with Tommy Lee Jones, talking about how disastrous last night was, Tommy Lee Jones is becoming more resistant to the whole therapy thing, talking about how you couples therapists just like stir up trouble so that, you know, so that people will keep coming to you and their relationships never get fixed. And Steve Carell basically says to him, look, I either help people fix their relationships or I help people end their relationships. Don't you want to say that you did everything you could do to save this? And Tommy Lee Jones's response is to go and berate the maitre d' at the local nice restaurant to get them a dinner reservation. And so as she is learning how to you know, properly get her freak on, he is practicing how to be actually romantic. And so she's in the bathroom doing all this as she is also getting ready for their date night out.
Now listen, I don't want to rehash old wounds here.
Okay.
But Ed Burns didn't put in any effort to
Okay.
change.
Dude. Don't you even compare Ed Burns to Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. Different ballpark, different sport, different league.
But he wasn't. He literally did nothing to change to come closer to her side in that movie. Whereas Tommy Lee Jones is stepping outside of himself for the better picture of the relationship.
Oh my God, Landon! I want a divorce. I want to start a solo podcast. Ed Burns listens to Angelina Jolie. Ed Burns cares about her. He like gives weight to what she's saying, and he has sex with her because he's attracted to her. He kisses her and touches her and stuff. He's a much better dude.
All right. I regret going down that road.
I mean, you know, look, we're like one of those couples who looks really good on Instagram, but then behind the scenes, like, our relationship is just a nonstop series of fights about Ed Burns. Everybody knows that one couple who can never stop fighting about Ed Burns' intentions in the movie Life or something like it. So they go to dinner at the restaurant.
Yes.
They have a nice time. They're
laughing. He doesn't complain once during this entire interaction.
It's amazing, a true hero. And they also they also kind of make some light fun of Dr. Feld and how weird and creepy his mannerisms are. I was waiting at that moment for them to turn around, and Dr. Feld and his wife are sitting at the next table, and Dr. Feld gives them a tight smile and says, I'm glad you're doing your homework. But
no, it's Elisabeth Shue and some guy from town sitting at one table, and Dr. Feld way in the background with a menu in front of his face, leering over it, watching them.
He motions the waiter over and says, Stanley, I know that you and your wife are having trouble. If you poison my ex-wife's soup, I'll see to it that your wife comes over to your side in that argument about the new cable package.
You wouldn't want to be having more trouble in your relationship, would you?
Yeah. This would turn into a real dinner for schmucks, if you know what I'm saying, Stanley.
But the date's going well.
And yeah, date's going well, and as dinner is ending, Tommy Lee Jones reveals, big surprise, he actually booked them a room upstairs at the local inn so they can spend the night there.
He's stepping out of his frugality. He's doing something he knows she would like.
Yeah, he's been terrible to her for the entire movie, and he has now decided to be nice. This is where I start to get upset. And look, I didn't mention this earlier, and I didn't really want to harp on it too much because I feel like I've done this on podcasts in the past. But basically, the way that Tommy Lee Jones is interacting with Meryl Streep for the first half of this movie is, again, he is just angrily putting down every single thing that she says, dismissing every thought that she has, denying that there's anything wrong, that there are any problems. This is a pattern of behavior that can be considered a form of domestic abuse. This behavior is abusive, and whatever. The movie is not trying to say, hey, Tommy Lee Jones is the good guy. The movie is not trying to say, hey, we all identify with Tommy Lee Jones, don't we? No, it's not doing that. His behavior is clearly bad. But
I think it might be. I mean, not identify and like you can relate to him, but we can all. I think it is to a degree saying we all know someone like this.
I mean, we all know someone like this, but nothing about the way he's acting is being portrayed as aspirational.
No, not at all.
The way he is acting towards his wife, he is behaving like a man who is in the process of planning a mass shooting. I'm sorry to go there, but like this. Tommy Lee Jones for most of this movie is a socially isolated white man who spends every waking moment in a state of aggrieved anger and treats his wife like shit. Like, that is... Those characteristics map very neatly onto people who do acts of mass violence. So I'm just saying...
I'm not disagreeing with you
at
all. In fact, I'm saying the reality of life is that scary. Like, this is such a pervasive reality that...
Yes.
I don't know. I don't see. Okay, so continue with what you're saying, I guess.
So this is the where we've started from, and he's been more or less in that space for most of the movie. At dinner and in the hotel room, it is a complete 180 from that. He has just basically decided, you know what? I'm just gonna be sweet and charming and self-effacing and a little bit goofy and very affectionate. And it's like, wait, so it's just like turning on a light switch of like just being nice to your wife.
A
Like,
metaphor that he uses against her when talking about not having sex anymore. It's like, I guess you can't just flip it on and off like a light switch. Maybe once it's off, it's off.
But so for him, he can switch the ability to recognize his wife's basic humanity on and off like a light switch. Because also what he's doing here, you know, so like they're up in the hotel room and there's like champagne and strawberries and they're eating them together. He puts on Let's Stay Together by Al Green and he's kind of dancing around and smirking at her. This is a scene that I referenced earlier where it's like, I don't really feel like this is earned, but it's very powerful to see Tommy Lee Jones acting this way and being this way and showing this kind of sweetness to his wife. Like, it's really tremendous acting. But it's just... all she has said to him is, for the whole movie, is she's been saying, I'd like it if you were a little bit romantic with me. And he's like, no, fuck you. We don't need that. We've been married 31 years. Eat shit and die.
See,
and then Dr. Feld tells him, like, for the fourth or fifth time, you should try being romantic. And then he just starts doing it. And it's great. And it's perfect. And that's it.
I hear you.
Oh boy,
your thoughts, feelings, and opinions are justified.
This movie's validated. Gonna end us. Okay.
No, this is where, again, I mentioned that I was struggling with my notes here because the nuance of everything that leads to this, I really truly feel like this is a well-crafted character study where every little bit of information and interaction that these characters have with each other, with Dr. Feld, with the characters around them, are all building out this psychological profile. And to me, it's not just that Dr. Feld, you know, gives him the ultimatum, but it goes back to, you know, him talking to his coworker early in the film. It goes back to, you know, the revelations, every revelation, little revelation that he's witnessed, you know, Meryl Streep, that Kay's had throughout this film, every confrontation, and it's all kind of been building in the stew so that when Dr. Feld lays down the ultimatum saying people come to me to fix their marriage or to end it, and he says this line, I just want to make sure that whatever comes, that you don't regret not doing everything you could have done.
Yeah.
Is your marriage worth more than your pride? Mm-hmm. And he, in that moment, he said, you know, there's separate moments. He asked the pride question earlier in their solo session, and Tommy Lee Jones, without a doubt, says, yes, of course my marriage is worth more than my pride. Like, it's not even a question. And so then when he comes up with this later and says, I just want to make sure that you have no regrets and that you've done everything that you could do. Like, it's all these little tiny nuanced things that aren't really plot points, but they're character and exposition points and build out the portrait of their marriage. That to me, like, yes, the him turning on the charm switch is a little more heightened than everything else we've seen leading up to this. But I don't feel like it's completely unearned. I feel like that's where the tone doesn't work for me, where it's like, this is trying to play it a little more lighter than everything we've seen leading up to it. The lightness doesn't feel earned. I feel like his character turn does, though.
I guess what is missing for me I acknowledge and respect and hear the things that you said. Thank you for sharing your feelings with me. I think the thing that I'm missing is I can plausibly understand what Meryl Streep's character wants from him, and also what she loves about him. Like, even in this scene where he's being kind of sweet, or even earlier when he's being affectionate with her, okay, I can see, like, what she's holding out for, what has been there in the past, what she's looking for. I've never gotten an indication in the movie, even up until now, that he likes her, or that there's anything about her that he loves. There's never been any signifier, any little moments of, like, you know, oh, he's grumpy and cranky all the time, but, like, this is, like, the only thing he's ever expressed about what he wants from her is basically a blowjob under his desk at the office. Like, and you know, that she stopped having sex with him, but, like, I've never seen any indicator of, like, this is what I like about my wife as a person. This is why I want to fight for her. This is why I want to overcome my pride. It doesn't need to be telegraphed or put out there in skywriting, but, like, some hint or indicator or a look or something that shows us that he wants to fight.
I think it is there. And here are the few examples that I can think of offhand. Again, it's so, like, little detailed and almost mannerism handled throughout this film, but when they do have their positive reminiscences about things, like when he is playing ball with this game, not playing with balls, but playing ball, you know, at one point Dr. Feld asks them, can you remember one of the happier or best times you've had sex? And it's overshadowed by just kind of how creepy the Dr. Feld character is, and, like, trying to elicit every textural detail of the memory. But Tommy Lee Jones is one of the first that goes into it. Arnold starts going into, like, I remember one. She was pregnant, and, you know, then they start reminiscing together, and you kind of see the alchemy of what he likes about her. And there's another moment when I think it was the "he wants it, not me" conversation,
which is
where Meryl Streep
written.
starts talking about not feeling attractive, and he's like, "It's not that. You're very attractive." And I believe him in that moment, but that comes into play very explicitly in this scene where they're about to have sex.
Yes.
So there are these little mile markers along the way that I don't know. I can see what he wants. To me, his problem is he's trapped inside himself.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with his like for her. It's about his ability to express it.
I guess I just wanted more of him escaping from himself and what
That's
that
fair.
is and what that looks like. It seems like we kind of, like, from one scene to the next, the escape has happened. It's like if the movie Escape from Alcatraz, like, one scene they're in Alcatraz and then the next scene they're, like, chilling in San Francisco, and it's like, whoa, hang on, there's the main thing of the movie happened off camera.
Do you feel like there'd be more what would help that feel like there's more movement there is if there was actual literal movement in the movie and not just sitting like, put them on a Ferris wheel at the very least, a chair that moves. Put them in a car with the top down.
The ultimate escalation. Put them on an escalator. Have them go.
Why not?
Stand still, but they move up. You're moving in multiple dimensions, forward and upward.
Yeah, it's just everything is so static and stuck in one place that I can see there's no visual motif of movement and growth and progress outside of just, you know, are we going to shoot this in separate shots to indicate that they aren't together, or are we going to shoot this in a two-shot where they're sitting on the couch together and they are together? Like, it's such a weak visual motif that, I don't know, it just becomes boring to look at.
Yeah. I mean, well, we found something we can agree on. Okay, so the point is, they're in the room, they're having a romantic moment, they start to kiss and have sex. There's some moving going on at that point, Landon, although they are sitting and lying down on the floor. But then, as they get to the business of it, Meryl Streep asks him to look at her while he's doing it, and he does, and that then he makes him unable to perform, and it's this really, like, heartbreaking ending to what has otherwise been this really nice moment. It's like, you don't love me, you don't think I'm attractive, you don't want to have sex with me, that's what did it. Movie has been marketed to audiences as a comedy. This is coming 15-20 minutes on the heels of her tearfully running out of a movie theater after botching a blowjob and having to be comforted on the street.
Do you think there's a moment like this in 80 for Brady?
Yeah, I think Book Club 1 and 2, there is some brutal sexual dysfunction. I think in 80 for Brady, they take the drugs where they're seeing everyone with Guy Fieri's face.
It's called pot.
Yeah. It's pot was the drug. Gotcha.
Yes.
Well, anyway, like what happens? You smoke pot, you see Guy Fieri's face on everyone, and it's just Jane Fonda's trying to have sex with someone, but then she looks at his face, and it's Guy Fieri, and she's unable to perform.
Oh Lord.
Which is mystifying to me because who couldn't look at Guy Fieri's face? Well, anyway, you get the rest of the joke.
Flavortown, won't you? Okay, let's go.
It's the last day. They go to Steve Carell, and he's like, well, okay, last night was a little setback, but hey, you know what? You fumbled the ball at the 1 yard line, and when you came to me, you weren't even on the field. So I'm going to refer you to a couples therapist back in Omaha. Great job. High five.
Yep.
Way to almost have sex. And
which is I want to interject here. I actually read another book for this movie.
Man, you freak.
I thought, let me spruce up a little bit of my therapist knowledge. I don't know if you know this. I went to college for 1 semester majoring in psychology. Oh. So I think I know a thing or two.
Yeah. You saw Hope Springs and were like, I want to be Dr. Feld.
I want control over a small New England town.
Yes.
I listened to the audiobook called The Marriage Clinic, which, really gave me no insight to this movie at all, except that after marriage counseling, there is a huge rescindance rate,
or recidivism,
of couples that do fine or seem like they're improving during the therapy, but once they are left to their own devices, i.e. this moment that Steve Carell is giving them a recommendation to a therapist in their own town, they very quickly rescind back to their routines and the ways that they were before they went into therapy in the first place. And it's another turn that I felt like was really interesting to acknowledge. Like, this is the make or break moment. It's not the therapy, it's the what do you do when you go back home moment.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, we're in the last 10 minutes of the movie here, folks. So the finish line of listening to Truman and Landen talk about sex more than maybe you would want to hear us talk about it is in sight. But they come back home, and he just goes right back to his guest bedroom down the hall and closes the door, and it's just like, and it's back to serving breakfast and not really interacting with each other. And it is all the more heartbreaking because they've gone through all of this. It seems like there was almost a breakthrough, but like it's just now they're almost even worse off than before, and she's really lost all hope. And at some point he says to her over a silent dinner, kind of talking about it, it's like, well, talking about the therapy, it's like, well, it's like one of those, makeovers. You get it done and it's there for a while, and then you just go back to normal. And
it's all about expectations.
Yes. And he says this is kind of just a matter-of-fact explanation of like, yeah, well, whatever. This is going to be our life now. I'm fine. And this is the point where I start thinking like, okay, wait, so then this is the movie that ends with them getting a divorce, right? Because, and she says to him, I just wanted more out of life, or I wanted more that I was looking forward to, or something like that.
He says you go back to how it was the way before, and she goes, well, I don't know that I can.
Yeah.
Like she's past the, point of no return. She's, gone over the event horizon and can't see her life the way she did before.
Because she's gouged out her eyes like Sam Neill in Event Horizon.
She's walking around without skin. It's weird.
Yeah. Hope is not springing anymore. I tell you what, Dr. Feld's cultish stuff has finally worked its way in.
It's not hope that springs from the breast. It's literal flesh that is taken from the breast. Anyway, that was weird. But we're clearly like at a point where Meryl Streep is, she is a changed character.
Yes.
And as an audience, we're like, okay, we saw Tommy Lee Jones change, but then he ends up, not by his own fault, in another sexual scenario of rejection. And this is the pattern of his character throughout the film and even before the film of, I offer sex or I get in a sexual situation. She, for whatever reason, doesn't want to, justifiably doesn't want to, and I'm okay with it, and we're just going to get back to, so there's the movie theater blowjob that doesn't go his way. There's some of the scenes in bed, the other exercises that didn't quite pan out.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this moment where, in the hotel room where they're going to have sex for the first time in 5 years, and he looks at her, and like, because of all this pent up stuff, I can imagine that the connection that he feels in that moment is like when he, is in the throes of it, he looks at her and then can't perform anymore. By looking at her, all of that stuff is flooding back, anxieties and sacrifices, and like, how do you stay in the moment? And so now he's gone back to, back home thinking nothing has changed for me. Every single situation has been the same for the last 31 years. You can't want it or don't want it, and that's fine. I've made a marriage on that. We are gonna continue on our routine for another 31 years.
Maybe not another 31. I mean, they're up there already. I mean, he's eating a lot of eggs and bacon. He's not going to live to be like 105 years old.
True. But, in his mind, he's like, we tried something, it didn't work, and now we're back to how it was, and I'm fine with that. And she's at a different place saying, I tasted, the potential of a different life, of the thing that I was striving for. And this is where the moment, or the movie kind of leaves us in this moment where suddenly she's going off on a different track and he's stuck on the same path yet to change. And I think that's important to note going into the final moment of this movie.
Okay. And look, again, that helps me to better contextualize what's going on here and better, I guess, appreciate it, because I mainly see it as like, dude, pick up on any of the hints about what, like literally have one drop of empathy.
But let me ask you this though: you're doing that about the character that you're watching on screen here. How many other people in real life have you had that thought about?
I mean, so many, and always men.
Yes.
But like I don't know.
But I'm saying that's why it's a representation of a certain reality, and I think that's part of what the frustration is.
Okay, I suppose so. My frustration is that the middle of the country exists, I guess. Well, and this does again play into a lot of my political obsessions. So hey, who knows? Midwestern listeners, I love you. Many fabulous states out there, Wisconsin among them, also Michigan. I don't know. I think for me, again, it's just this whole thing of like, okay, he's gone through all of this process and does not seem to have learned anything from it. But then in this, she says this to him about how she can't go back to how it was. She talks to Gene Smart at work about like, hey, do you still need someone to look after your cat? Maybe I could stay at your house for a few days where you're out of town. Like, she's preparing to like basically move out. This also is setting up for me the movie I much more want, which is newly divorced Meryl Streep living with her kick-ass roommate Gene Smart, and them just going out to bars and hooking up with dudes.
Yes.
But much better. I'm sorry, Hope Springs. That is the film I want to see. But then her last night at home, her bags are packed and everything, and Tommy Lee Jones invites her to watch the Caine Mutiny with her, and she says no, and then he hears her crying in her room, and he goes back to his room for a while, and then finally he goes and knocks on her door and comes in the room and kisses her and gets into bed with her, and they have sex. And then
so there's an important Tommy Lee Jones scene that I think is missing here, where he, I just explained in my view, like, where he's at that dinner table scene talking about expectations and returning to normal.
Yeah.
When he goes back to work the next day, the guy, his coworker at the beginning of the film, who tells him, like, oh yeah, I wish I'd worked harder, I wouldn't be living in a condo, blah blah blah, he has the same coworker interaction, and the dude kind of nonchalantly just asks him, oh yeah, how was New England? And it's like Tommy Lee Jones acknowledges in that moment, it's one of those things like asking someone, oh, how you doing today? And you're like, I can't give you the novel of how I'm actually doing, so I'm just going to say fine.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, good. And he goes, well, you know what? If it keeps the wifey happy for another year, it's money well spent. And in that moment, Tommy Lee Jones kind of realizes the journey that they've gone on of, like, it's not as simple as that, dude. You have no idea what transpired, what's actually going on at home. It's not as simple as a, how's the weather kind of conversation or interaction. And I think that's, important to kind of acknowledge in terms of his turn at the end here to choose to make an effort to be with his wife.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I mean, I'll give you that.
Points on the board. Thank you.
Points on the board.
Who's winning? Who's winning the Hope Springs contest here?
The relationship is going great, guys. It is all about the points. The secret to a successful podcasting relationship is just get more points than the other one, obviously.
Yes.
He goes to her room. They have sex. No.
Yeah.
They make love. Barf.
It's intimate,
and it's sensual. It's intimate. There's sexy times on the pleasure craft, but they go that from that. Then it's the next morning. She's making breakfast for him. He comes downstairs like normal. It's the scene we've seen like 4 times. Oh, chicken for dinner tonight. Okay, 6:00, whatever. Okay, and he starts to walk out the door, and then he comes back to where she's standing in the kitchen, and he kisses her so passionately he like pushes her, bends her backwards over the sink, which is running to the point that her head almost goes under the water, and he's like bracing himself against the other counter to push her back.
Hot cha-cha.
Hot cha-cha. Also, I'm just looking at this like you want to talk about acting. These are 2 people over the age of 60 doing some contortions with their backs. This would be
they had stunt performers, Truman.
They had, well, listen, then it is a seamless one-shot like work of technical wizardry to get the intimacy doubles in there. Very passionate.
By the way,
yeah.
Just a side note, they did have to work hard to keep this from being an R. This is a PG-13 movie, and he said that there's one scene of special effects during the hotel sex scene that they had to implement to bring it from an R down to a PG-13.
But did he say what it was?
No, he didn't. I listened to the commentary with David Frankel on this, and he said if you pay attention, you can see what it is. I've watched this movie 3 times. I did not see what it was. I'm nervous as to what it could be.
Landen is just frame by frame in 4K going through the sex scenes in Hope Springs, with a magnifying glass up to his screen. What are the secrets? But then, he's given her this passionate kiss. He goes outside. He's left his briefcase. She runs out with his briefcase so he doesn't forget it, and they're having a sweet moment by the car, another kiss, and then they hear a voice shout, oh, hey guys, how was your trip? And it's their neighbor walking the corgis, who Tommy Lee Jones mentioned wanting to have a threesome with, and she's played by Mimi Rogers? What? And they... and Meryl Streep shouts back like, oh, it was great. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? We can tell you all about it. Oh, that sounds great. I'll see you tonight. And then basically she looks at Tommy Lee Jones and says, never, not even in your dreams, or something like that.
Don't even think about it. Yeah.
Don't even think about it. And they kiss, and we needle drop on It Ain't Over Till It's Over by Lenny Kravitz, and then credits. And
where they're the over the credits, they have this extra footage of them renewing their vows on the beach in the most cringe-worthy way possible.
Yes, it is very cringe-worthy. Do you know the lore behind this scene, Landon? The exciting lore?
Vaguely, just from the commentary, so I only know David Frankel's side of it.
From the twisted mind of David Frankel.
I do know that it was shot after the fact, and that they flew Tommy Lee Jones out, and before they, like, the second he said rap, Tommy Lee Jones was back on a plane before they even, like, broke down the set for the day.
We have not talked much about just really what an awful person Tommy Lee Jones is. I think a tremendous actor. I don't think the fact multiple people he's worked with have like said on press tours to reporters with their names attached, that man is a bully. Like, that's not like,
I haven't heard the bully thing. I mean, I
talk
think
to Joel Schumacher.
Okay. Well, listen, I have an aversion to getting into anyone's private stuff unless there's like illegal activity. Like, if you're just an asshole, like, that's your business, whatever, you know. As long as you're a professional and you're not holding things up, like, be a curmudgeon.
At a press junket for the movie Men in Black, a reporter asked Tommy Lee Jones if he believed in aliens, and Tommy Lee Jones' response was to get up and walk out of the room. He's not being an asshole quietly and discreetly in his private life.
But I mean, he's being frank about it. I mean, there's nothing about Tommy Lee Jones's face that says, "Hey, I'm friendly, come talk to me."
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but you don't have to be a dick to reporters. I don't know.
I know, but like, if you're going up to a doghouse that says, "Beware of dog bites, it is a very angry dog," and you go up and knock on the door and say, "Hey, dog, do you believe in aliens?" I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Okay. All right, we're victim blaming a little bit here. This also isn't the point. I'm just saying, the scene on the beach, the vow renewal scene, it is cringe-inducing, it is awkward, it is... Steve Carell is doing their vow renewal, their family is there with them.
Is it another $4,000?
Yes, I know. Exactly. This guy is leaving, no stone unturned in his hunt for more cash. But also, so the point, Meryl Streep mentions this in the press junket video that I was able to find on YouTube, where she improvised this scene where Steve Carell asks them if they've had any fantasies, and she improvised the line, "Well, I have this fantasy about us renewing our vows for our anniversary," and then they decided, "Oh, let's actually do that scene for the end credits," and it's like, boy, that was a great improv by Meryl Streep. I think a poor decision to then film this vow renewal, because it does not add anything. It feels really just awkward because everybody is kind of just improvising this.
Again, playing to the audience that you're marketing toward, like, send them out happy. Like, that's the generation that is seeing this, is like, they don't want to leave feeling depressed. So you really gotta amp it up.
There's also a recurring metaphor of how that Steve Carell uses of how the couples therapy, it's like when you have a deviated septum, you have to break the nose to fix it, and so then he has like a ceramic nose with him, like, for the ceremonial breaking of the nose for them to stomp on, like, at the Jewish wedding or something.
Forced laughter, ha ha ha.
And also the way that he kind of, I'm sorry, again, you know who else would introduce a weird and inappropriate prop at the wrong time? Michael Scott, regional manager, Dunder Mifflin Paper Company, and the tone of voice he uses of kind of laughing at himself, like, I have a nose here. It's like, he's still doing the voice.
Oh God. Then the scene just kind of devolves into them having a lobster dinner and then getting up and dancing.
They're dancing,
frolicking along the beach while there are other beach goers there.
Just people. Imagine you're just walking around on the beach and it's like, wait, is that Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones dancing? What? Like, also,
well, even in the world of the movie, like, say you're just sitting on a beach, on a blanket with your partner watching the sunset, and then there's just this annoying family that just starts frolicking it's like being at like a bonfire or a fire pit on a beach, and then someone comes up with that boombox and just starts blasting their tunes. You're like, there are other people on the beach. Could you not frolic in public, please?
I mean,
go to a private beach, which you can certainly afford.
Okay, I agree with you, but also I can kind of hear all of the things you're saying coming out of Tommy Lee Jones's mouth a little bit. Like,
listen, maybe that's why I was defending him. I see myself maybe a little too much in Tommy Lee Jones in this movie.
There's just something so awkward to the fact that there was not really a plan for the shoot, and they're telling them,
No.
okay, well, just and just do some dancing, and just trying to think of the coaxing that it took to get Tommy Lee Jones to kind of prance around a little bit on the beach.
To be improvisationally whimsical is maybe not a tool in the toolbox of Tommy Lee Jones.
No, it's definitely not. It's like he's not a yes and guy. He's just an I don't care guy. That's his response.
I think it'd just be like stolid silence.
Yeah. Yeah, people are doing 8 6 7 5 4 4 3 2 1, and he's just standing there frowning at them as they do it.
3-line scenes are just 2-line scenes.
Yeah.
Someone says a premise, he's silent, and then they finish with a punchline.
His booty is not big. That's what that's the special effect that they had to do in the sex scene. They had to alter his booty.
His improv game is zip, zap, stop.
Boy, I hope that at least one of our listeners is tangentially familiar with improv games, so they're enjoying this conversation as much as we are.
Okay, should we wrap this up
yes.
and talk about why this movie was forgotten?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. You want to go first?
Yes. I think that for, obviously, of course, this movie's impossible to promote. You're talking about the same thing. I think people who showed up to see this movie were sold a comedy and got something that is really not. And so I think that is... Okay, so that's just going to be a bad experiences for audiences, and that's not going to be a thing that lingers with them. But furthermore, I read a lot of reviews of this movie. There are some fairly critical reviews from like Roger Ebert and The New Yorker. All the reviews praise the performances across the board. There are reviews, from the hoity-toityer critics that kind of mirror my thoughts that, like, these are good performances that are not well served by the way the story plays out. But all of the good reviews of the movie that really like it, even they largely amount to, like, the performances are really good. It's just a nice little movie. Like, this is just really nice. Like, if you, like, the best case scenario of you go to see this movie and everything in it works for you and you love it, is your response is like, oh, that was cute. That was a nice little movie.
Yeah.
That was cute. And it's like, that's not the reaction that engenders a passionate fan base and a long life in cultural memory. This is a polite and inoffensive movie, even though aspects of it might offend certain more delicate sensibilities or might offend my perceptions of how men should treat their wives. So I think just that, either it didn't work for you and you forgot about seeing it because you didn't like it, or it did work for you and you forgot about it because you saw other movies that you liked that made a bigger impression. What about you? Why do you think this was forgotten?
I would summarize what you said, especially about the critics, as like, this is a single serving film.
Yes.
You have one of it and you're done. Forever.
Or unless you watch it 3 times.
Unless you watch it 3 times. There are great performances in it. It's a good premise for a script, though. The direction, it's just bland as hell. Even the cinematography, I think, is just so boring. It is like watching wallpaper. Like you said once of the Life or Something Like It trailer. Just watch the trailer and you get enough of the movie. I feel like you watch the poster for this and you get the movie.
Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep are going to sit in front of some blinds and they're going to look in a direction.
Yeah. The tone is awkward. Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it feel good? Is it saccharine? It's kind of all over the place. I already said that this premise, I think, is a good story. I like the representation of it, but it should have been a book.
Yes.
It just is not cinematic. This movie exists for, like, if this movie came out in the 70s, before there was home video, before there was streaming, it would be like, you go to the movies, you would go see it, and, like, you wouldn't have the expectation of, this is entering the cultural consciousness library to be accessed at all time. This is just a movie to exist for couples to go to on a Sunday afternoon and never think about it again. It's just not designed to be a long-lasting film. This film, the only way this movie comes up in memory is if there's a 42-year-old man who has a movie podcast and mentions the movie he's going to be doing to his parents, and his parents go, "I think we saw that, didn't we? Was that what was Steve Carell in that one?"
Well, yeah,
that's what Hope Springs, how it lives on in the memory.
And
it was, I think it was designed to be that way.
Well, it's just it's wild though. I don't disagree with that, but like it is wild to think about that. Like, yes, this was sort of a disposable movie with 2 Academy Award winners in it.
Well, and that's the thing is like it I feel like it's so easily, with a little bit more attention to style, or like if the filmmaking actually got into the psychology of their marriage, not just letting the script and the performances speak, but like actually give me some cinematic language, develop some blocking and tableaus, take it out of the therapist's office and like give me some action to demonstrate things. Like, again, give this to Alexander Payne or someone with that kind of level of psychological composition. This could have been like an Oscar contender.
Yeah, give us them on their own, interacting with the denizens of the town, having interactions with other people who they don't know. They're out of their comfort zone, make some hay out of that, and how the whole town of make Hope Springs, the town, kind of a character in the movie Hope Springs.
Yes. But then I circle back to, that's what I want. And this movie's not made for me, and I'm okay with that. And so I kind of fall on the side of like, this is fine. This is a representation of things you don't normally see for an audience who doesn't normally get this sort of stuff catered to them. And good. And fine.
And fine. And also, this is a representation of something we don't really see anymore. It's a mid-budget movie. Yep. It's like a $30 million movie that was successful.
The last one ever produced, maybe?
Possibly the last one, because I had a chilling thought to send us out on today. Okay. If this was made today, baby, it'd be like an 8 to 10 episode series. This would be stretched out and bloated and full of unnecessary conflict. The pilot would be pretty strong and thought-provoking, and within 2 to 3 episodes, you'd be like, "Oh, they don't have enough. They are filling this with packing peanuts."
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
well, I guess that leaves our verdicts. What should we send this back to modern memory or leave it floating out here in 2012?
Look, I've been fairly hard on this movie, harder than you, I think. But that being said, I think we should actually send it back to modern memory, simply on the strength of the performances, on the strength of Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep and the work that they did, and on the strength of the fact that, this is a movie that it is certainly not bad. It is not a bad movie. There's a lot of places that it left me high and dry, and there's reasons I don't like it and why parts of it upset me. But like, I think this is a movie that a lot of people would watch now and would be happy about. It is 2 great performances. It shines a positive light on therapy, even though the therapist in it seems a little culty. And I also, there's not a lot of movies about old people that acknowledge that they want a bone. Like, we need all the help we can get with that. So I say send it back. What do you say?
I think they prefer experienced people, not old people.
Oh, okay. I thought you're not going to take issue with me using the word bone. You're going to take issue with the word old. Great. Okay. M. Night Shyamalan's experienced.
This is where I feel like after 8 years podcasting together, we can still surprise each other. Because I thought you would have, based on your conversation, left it forgotten. Yeah. And based on how I was coming at it, it probably sounded like I would say, let's keep this in modern memory. I'm saying, let's leave it forgotten.
Oh.
Because I don't. No one has anything to be embarrassed about here. And to kind of relate what you were saying, if someone were in a position where they were going to be forced to watch this movie, it would not be a grueling experience. But ultimately, there's not much beyond the performances to really recommend it. And, there are just as good, if not better, Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep performances out there. So I don't know. There's just it's kind of hollow, and I don't think anyone is missing. Society isn't missing anything by forgetting this movie.
Yeah, we'll all soldier on somehow.
And I think this just shows the strength of our relationship in that we can come to a disagreement and respect each other's reasons for the positions we're taking.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like I learn new things about you and your taste in film and what films you think are memorable and deserve to be remembered every day. And that kind of excitement is why I think we'll be podcasting together for another 8 years at least. Now, wait. As we end the episode, is there going to be footage of us like getting our podcast license renewed on a beach somewhere? And it's
Steve Carell is gonna officiate, and then we're gonna make him dance so cringeworthy.
When he's dancing with them on the beach, there's only like 1 second of it, and it's like, that's Michael Scott dancing. God damn it, he's doing like the Michael Scott Booze Cruise dance moves. Also, Steve Carell would not officiate our podcast renewal ceremony. It would either be Steve Rubel, who runs Studio 54, or maybe Simone? I don't know.
Or Steve Brule, maybe?
Yeah, Steve Brule is, I think, closer to our vibe.
He is a doctor.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got nothing else for this episode. Is there anything we didn't touch on you want to touch on?
No, there's not. Although that is, I think, something that Meryl Streep asks Tommy Lee Jones at one point, or maybe that's something Steve Carell asks them.
All right, well then, let's hold hands and stare into each other's eyes as we bid everyone adieu. For Truman Caps, I've been Landon Solano.
For Landon Solano, I've been Truman Caps. Have a lovely week.
Whoa!
Movie Memory Machine is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/gruntworkpodcast to keep the machine running. Theme song by Porky's Groove Machine. Rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. For more information on today's show, visit MovieMemoryMachine.com.